Tamra is unclassifiable, and that's probably the highest tribute that any of us can be paid. A musician, an artist, a seeker, a spouse and lifelong partner to Ronnie Pontiac, and an inspiration to countless numbers of people who learned from her path how to find their own. She crossed so many cultural boundaries as a pioneering punk rock musician, a source, I think, of both learning and inspiration to the great dean of esoterica in the modern age, Manly P. Hall, a collaborator with Ronnie, and a distinguished writer on her own terms, author of a very moving memoir about life in occult Los Angeles and what it was like to imbibe the waters of wisdom from Manly P. Hall in the closing decade of his life. Tamra and Ronnie collaborated on a translation and curated collection of Orphic hymns, which in themselves are magical ceremonies. I believe that's a book that Manly Hall would have been proud of them for producing.
She always had this great ability to listen, hear you out, really get to the essence of what was being said, and then bam, she would drop a truth bomb into the situation, and it was always exactly the right thing that needed to be added to the conversation, exactly when it needed to be added.
She would unearth difficult truths and lay them out for everyone to see. She was the best sort of light bearer. With a fierce moral compass, I resonated with her deep care for animals and of the planet. She helped me out with my own battles trying to save the trees that were being mowed over by a developer in my neighborhood, threatening my own land. She just intuitively knew what to do.
I got to watch from a ringside seat as Tamra grew from a seasoned lead singer, musician, songwriter that had already been on the radio and at Rolling Stone and toured the U.S. Long before we ever met, to a musical producer, screenwriter, documentary film producer, and since 2020, a published author several times over of books, both her own and those co-written with Ronnie. Tamra was hilarious and always had a lightning-fast mind and razor-sharp wit and tongue. It could be very intimidating if you didn't know her. It could be very intimidating if you did know her. She was a well-trained martial artist with a kind heart who would rescue and revive hummingbirds she'd find laying exhausted in the yard. Tamra loved and truly understood the animals that shared their home inside and out and made it such a warm place. I couldn't be any more impressed with the person she became, the life she chose to live, or more grateful for the incredible stroke of luck that allowed me to spend so much time in the company of someone so intense and so intensely private.
She really drew me out, asked penetrating questions, and I was very moved by her. You know, I found Tamra to be deep and sensitive. She was curious and funny as a monkey sometimes. Very, very intuitive, and she had a way with words that I really liked. She would write to me and tell me about her very wild and wonderful life living in Los Angeles under the shadowy wings of Manly Palmer Hall. And Manly Palmer Hall had been showing up in my dreams. And so when she said that, I thought, oh, I need to read this manuscript. It's really a fascinating book about her amazing occult experience. It's about what happens when life grabs your attention and you engage in it full tilt, which Tamra had a penchant for doing. I loved her stories of the riot grrrl days and her photographs of the midnight stalking howlers, like coyotes, I guess, that come around the property. The many, many pictures of the beautiful sunrises and sunsets and birds soaring. She'll be missed as a friend, but mostly as a voice, as a teller of tales. And the way that her eye captured the details of life all around her, I always looked forward to that.
She asked, had I anything else in the works? And, maybe I just vented on her a little bit. And I said, well, I've got this project that I have spent the last 15 years on, and it's kind of gone nowhere, and I've had a lot of rejections. So I told her all about it, and she got very excited about it, and she said, I would love to connect you with my friend John Graham over at Inner Traditions. He's an editor. Inner Traditions bought both books. So Tarot Life Lessons came out in 2023, and The Occult Sylvia Plath came out in 2024. Tamra Lucid is in the acknowledgments of both books because they would not have happened without her.
I always feel like somehow more hollow compared to her strength. Some of our last emails were during the fires at the beginning of the year, and the insanity that was attending that. Tamra said that they've been catching pyros all over town, and she followed up by saying it's so Joker and that movie sucked. Tamra, to me, she was someone who was an authentic human being, and there's not so many of those. She's one of those people whose strength, whose focus, whose deep self is so present in even the smallest note. And I have the sense from Tamra that she lived at the depths, and what she shared from there was a endless blessing.
I love the quote attributed to Tamra. It's not about fame, it's about the individual conversations. This idea is so important to both the artist and people that the art reaches, to know that it isn't this climb to the top or this kind of competition to be the best, that it really is about the individual conversations, the connections made, what is learned, how we are inspired. And that's something that Tamra was really involved in, was making those important connections between people to rejuvenate in a way that is quite rare. I would get messages from her on Facebook just out of the blue with all this energy to keep going, and we love you and we're proud of you, and it was like, wow, I don't get a lot of that really. And it felt unique and authentic and really touching, and it actually helped as well. So this was a truth in her reality, and could be a truth to benefit so many more people.
Wow, I was so excited to hear that somebody who was about my age spent 7 years with Mr. Hall. I couldn't wait to read Tamra's book, and it didn't disappoint. It felt like an intimate conversation with a girlfriend about her endearing friendship with Manly P. and the really human side of him. How he was funny, kind, gentle, a great soul who just wanted to be in service to mankind. I think he succeeded in that. Beautiful Tamra, did I see you cosmic fire dancing with Shiva? Powerful lady. Did you come from the sun with fire in your eyes? I swear I saw you defending the voiceless. Tamra reflecting the sun now, striking the pond at dusk, sparkles, glitters, laughing at the absurdity of life while enchanting the koi with her presence. Did you see her celebrating with other stars in the cosmos? Join in. I'm sure she welcomes you. A gift of grace from the gods, perhaps. Her radiance surely earned. Do you remember the way air shifted when she entered a space? The way you felt so alive around her. It's hardly just a memory, more like an imprint of her being. Yay, us, for having walked the earth with Tamra. Do you think it's all over now that she dropped the body? Best not to think. Feel. Radiance doesn't depend on skin, muscle, or breath. Pure presence now. She's unfiltered light. Compassion, love, her wicked sense of humor, they aren't physical. The current's moving freely now. Feel her. She's everywhere. You can find her in the silence, in sudden warmth, in intuition, whispering guidance. See her in stunning sunsets. See her in the surreal colors of flowers, the joy of newly hatched birds, taking flight for the first time. Raise your eyes, look up, up. What if the stars could reach for us?
And with Tamra's help, things really gelled. And it's just what I needed. So Ronnie and Tamra are an amazing couple. What a couple. Most significantly, she hit me to Allen Ginsberg's knowledge of Thomas Tale of the Platonist in connection with the romantic Neoplatonisms of Shelley and the romantic original Gnostic William Blake. She sent me an outline of Allen Ginsberg's Naropa 1975 Shelley course, which had all the info.
She was a multi-dimensional being made flesh in this world. But Tamra truly personified the spirit of activism, the kind that brought about outer change in the world while causing inner positive change within the individual. She never sold out, ever. She was always flowing with the movement, fighting the cause and transforming those who felt powerless and displaced. Her legacy as an activist is truly inspirational, so don't forget and always remember that Tamra's legacy is that we can make a difference. And the difference is something more than, our sudden awakening to the nature of society. So that's good. That's a good start. No, it's true change. It's true change to the world.
Hi, Tamra. Thank you for always being so kind and supportive and inspiring and wonderful and just such a graceful and fiery presence. And it's just been so sad to not have you here with us. And I hope that this journey that you're on now is just incredible.
I felt the sincerity of her as a person in all of our exchanges. There's a whole lot of people who say a whole lot of things. I don't feel like Tamra was one of those people. I think Tamra walked the walk and she talked the talk and she lived the life that she preached. And I respected that tremendously about her. And I really feel like she understood that I was thinking a lot about death and about the meaning of life. Whether or not any of this means anything, whether or not all these spiritual things that we talk about, are any of them real? We all go through these periods of doubt. Or maybe not all, I know I do. And at that time, I was feeling a lot of doubt. And Tamra's answer, I have returned to Tamra's answer dozens of times. It is sad, Jeff, but it's also beautiful. Are you familiar with the Japanese phrase mono no aware? Look it up if you aren't. I think it applies to Gurdjieff too. Same thing's true of Manly P. Hall. Dragged around in a motorhome while his wife pursued her impossible mission. Undignified end for such a dignified man. But there's something beautiful about it. Like when you look back at a pet you loved, and in parentheses she's added, God, that sounds condescending, but I think you know what I mean. So, like when you look back at a pet you loved, your heart is still broken by the absence, yet there's the warmth and the beauty of the memories. There's the love. You know, we're all in this sandbox to learn our lessons, and everything here eventually returns to the sand. But we are not only sand, we are stars.
And what always stood out was her kindness and her strength. She never glossed over how hard things can get and how hard life can be sometimes. But she always had the right words, gentle and always compassionate and kind.
The more we spoke, the more we uncovered the fact that we had many similar artistic and musical influences and interests. I began to find out more about her pedigree in music and art, and I was just blown away that someone like this existed on two very different worlds that I tend to run in, both the esoteric and kind of hardcore punk stuff. Just to be aware of someone who was like a bit of a hidden master was just all types of impressive. She would always just try to direct my mind towards the positive, what I could create. In that sense, really helped me to realize I do have some skills left in me, even though my heart was completely broken, and I could, write lyrics and record an album that's now due to come out. She's a big part of why I'm here still. I got pretty low, and I'm very honored to call Tamra a friend.
My connection to Tamra always felt very proper, especially so because of conversations we had about countercultural spirituality and punk metaphysics. I published interviews with Tamra, and a review of her book, and a review of Ronnie's book, and an interview with him in this book, Rare But Serious. And I revised my latest work of fiction, Black Toothpaste, with an eye to upping the humor quotient in Tamra's honor after hearing about someone else's dream of Tamra appearing and reminding the person, I remember you gotta laugh. Meaning, I suppose, no matter how bad it gets. It was an honor to know her, and I'm glad to have contributed to this celebration.
Not long after she passed, I had a Facebook memory pop up where she had simply said, "We love you, Matt Marble." And I remember getting that the first time, and I don't think she knew that I needed that when I received it. But judging from the way that she helped so many other people in those right moments, she probably did have a good radar sense of how to administer her compassion. Immediately, I just loved the passionate drive that she had, which was very palpable, the clear intellect, and the huge heart that drove her work without really kind of putting herself in front of everything. She put the work in front of her, the kind of breadth of her wonderfulness and the humility that she used to cover it. But regardless, I love that Ronnie and Tamra met in their wonderful early days with Manly Hall here. And I love that they got to share this incredible life together and collaborate on all this music and writing. So beautiful, so fruitful, right? And those fruits don't wither. They continue propagating, right? And I can't wait for you all to read Ronnie and Tamra's forthcoming book, The Unobstructed Way, through the people she touched, the legacy of her work, and the torch that I know Ronnie does and will hold in her name. Tamra's spirit will continue working long after we've joined her in the Unobstructed. I find gratitude in knowing that people like Ronnie and people like all of you who are here will keep alive this flame of creativity and wonder and justice that Tamra dedicated her life to. So thank you, Tamra. And I send my love to you, to Ronnie, and to everyone at PRS.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jane Lynch, and I want to thank you for gathering together this afternoon to celebrate the life of Tamra Lucid. Today, we will hear personal stories, recollections, and some of the awesome adventures in Tamra's life, including the powerful and inspiring impact she had on so many. And of course, we'll begin to understand the beautiful and healing partnership that is Ronnie and Tamra. Ronnie Pontiac and Tamra Lucid burst onto my consciousness about a year and a half ago when I saw Ronnie interviewed on New Thinking Aloud, Jeffrey Mishlov's All Things Esoteric interview show on YouTube. Ronnie spoke lovingly of his wife Tamra and the brilliance of her mind. They were partners not only in this life, but in this work. From their time here at PRS to books about the Orphic mysteries, a book on another mystical couple, Betty and Stuart White. And so intrigued was I with them and by their work, and a bit on fire, that I set out to meet them. I slid into Ronnie's DMs and convinced him that I must meet them, and at their home. And Ronnie said, sure, I'll make you coffee. It was a beautiful afternoon with Ronnie and Tamra. Tamra gave me a copy of her book, Making the Ordinary Extraordinary, and I found that book so remarkable that I read it in almost one sitting. In addition to her brilliant mind, I found Tamra to be an ethereal, almost angel-like creature and a true delight. I am so thankful to have met her, and I'm grateful for my continuing friendship with her husband and partner. And please welcome Ronnie Pontiac.
Hi, baby. Look at you brave souls who came out here. Everybody's on Zoom, but you came in person. I want to thank you. Really appreciate you being here for this. It's my intent to share with you the spectrum of Tamra's amazing life. No one really can relate to the whole thing because usually in social media you find some piece of it. Tamra the musician, Tamra the documentary film producer, Tamra the author, Tamra the artist, Tamra the martial artist. But here we're going to see all of them, and I hope to amuse you with some of these amazing experiences that we had. So let's get started. We saw him already, so we'll skip him.
Tamra is rebel-hearted,
visionary, fiercely poetic, a radical dreamer, a survivor, compassionate, empathetic, imaginative, a mentor, unapologetic, a trailblazer, a soulful truth teller, a boundary pusher, fearless, a countercultural icon, raw and real with her transformative presence, a bold storyteller, unshakable, spirit-led, revolutionary, unconventional, a deep listener, a catalytic force, a martial artist, a mystic, fiercely tender, a light carrier, and a friend.
Let Tamra speak for herself.
My interests? Revolution girl style. My band is called Lucid Nation. I play guitar and bass and drums, and I sing and I write songs. Actually, Team Dresch and Bikini Kill inspired me to pick up an instrument and play. When I saw them, one, I felt that they were so talented. It was just, I want to do that too. And two, there was a relaxation about being creative, an acceptance of any form of creativity as long as it's self-expression. And I thought that was just the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen. And so it inspired me to just do it. My main goal is to create an equalist attitude in my music, with my peers, creating a safe space for people to be creative, to be individualized, and to feel that they can achieve more than a preordained stereotype that culture has placed on them, or society rather than culture. I think there's a difference.
Wanting to provide a safe space where people can become who they were meant to be. She got them right here. Where did she discover the difference between society and culture? Right here at PRS. And everything that you're going to see in this presentation was born here and in our friendship with the Halls. Although it went places I don't think they would have expected. Here she is. Tamra could whistle before she could talk, and she could ride a horse before she could walk. But given the news these days, it's important for me to share with you, I think, and you'll have to bear with me during the beginning of this because Tamra had a very difficult beginning. And I want to tell you a little bit about it so that you understand what she overcame. And because it should be inspiring to all of us that we too can overcome whatever problems we faced and face now, as she did. This little girl had an older brother who was about 10 years older, who at that age, when she was still a toddler, started calling her an effing bitch and hitting her, just as we hear about in the news these days. Tamra somehow managed to survive that beginning, as we'll see. There's the riot girl. All in the very earliest days, she was all set to go. I consider this the earliest picture of a riot girl. And she used to do living room shows. She was not encouraged to be a musician. I mean, if you had a kid that did that, wouldn't you give them guitar lessons? She didn't get them because she was a girl. And according to her mother, her destiny was to grow up to be a waitress. Tamra loved to ride horses and was fortunate to have a public stable nearby, and this was her favorite horse, Tony. To begin with, that expression on her face was something that I believe that the bullies that she stood up to over and over again whenever a weaker child was being picked on at school suddenly found Tamra in his or her face stopping the abuse. But when I look at this picture, I also think that it's a foreshadowing of her and myself. I have seen that look on her face many times, and she certainly held my reins during our life together, which was a great blessing to me. Tamra had a very difficult childhood, not only a brother who committed that kind of abuse, but also as he grew up and began to drink and have crazy adventures, he would come into her bedroom at night drunk, and he would wake her up and tell her stories about these bizarre experiences he was having, and would also enjoy telling her about horrible car accidents and injuries and diseases that he had heard about to horrify her. So this was a nightly experience for her. She also had a mother who deliberately taught her to be dyslexic. It began because her mother was a Church of Christ lady and thought that because Tamra was left-handed, she was evil. And so Tamra had to be right-handed and was forced to be right-handed. And then this woman taught Tamra to pronounce words and spell them incorrectly and then would laugh at her for it. Somehow, Tamra managed to survive that and still be an A student, and she acquired a menagerie of animals, which were her real family. This Tamra woke up one morning before she started middle school with an absolute terror, a foreboding that something horrible was going to happen. And like many girls in middle school, unfortunately, she became the object of untrue rumors about her apparently audacious sexual proclivities that many boys were willing to sign on to because it made them look good. She had not known that this was happening, of course, and as she was walking to school that morning, she saw a boy that she liked down the street and waved at him, and his face turned red and he yelled, "Whore," at her. From then on, her life at school was a nightmare until 12th grade. She was attacked in the hallways. She was constantly called horrible names. She was considered to be the lowest of the low. Obviously, the kind of people that she wanted to hang out with would not hang out with her because they thought that she was some kind of a lowlife. And then ultimately it culminated at the age of 15 when walking to school, she was abducted, brutally beaten, and raped, and was being driven to a cemetery to be murdered. When she realized what was happening, this courageous girl grabbed the steering wheel and tried to swerve the car into oncoming traffic in order to kill herself and the attacker. This scared him, and he let her go. Of course, her grades all went to hell. She was very unhappy being at school because she was constantly in danger there. And she became a very, very quiet person, somebody who had been told over and over again, despite having been an A student, that she was stupid. And she began to believe it. I guess I'm stupid, and accepted it. And just tried the best she could to have fun where she could find fun, which weren't many places, unfortunately, for her. Here she talks about it during an interview with the Arte channel about Riot Grrrl.
You do have to be conscious when you leave your home to have your guard up, to be aware that things can happen and to take that into consideration. I think that's true, you know, for just about every female when they go out, but particularly here because this is the capital of car crime. Here, you basically go from your home to your car, and particularly for women, even going from your front door to your car can be dangerous. I have a subterranean garage, and that's frightening for most women. So you hold your keys in your hand, and you, in a specific way that you can use them to stab somebody if you have to. You get in your car and you lock your door. You have to check your car to make sure nobody's in your car so that you don't get abducted or murdered.
Rather cavalier about talking about it, don't you think? So in 12th grade, she found a boyfriend who was interested in her as a sexual object, and that was pretty good for her. She was finally having some fun and getting drugs that she liked, and was not getting pushed around anymore because he was an important enough person at school that people were afraid to mess with her. However, when she graduated, she went into a series of jobs. She was a messenger, she was a bank teller, she was a warehouse worker, and at one point she even was given the opportunity to be an intern with a great makeup artist. But she didn't feel any of those jobs were where she needed to be, and this is what she had to say about them. Well, I guess not. Help me out here, Matt. I think so. Let's try it again. Nope, we're one ahead. There we go. Nope. Oh, now we're way over here. Okay, this is the one.
I was unsatisfied with my life direction, and the jobs I worked were soul-killing.
First of all, that she realized it, you know? She didn't conform. She just realized this is killing my soul. And like many girls who at that time realized that they had a soul-killing future ahead of them, she wound up at a place that one wouldn't think would be the right place to go for that problem. So there was one rainy April 1st night. My drummer had come down from Sacramento to go find our guitar player and force him back into the band. I was dragged out there. She was dragged out there by this person that she barely knew who was trying to just have fun and tried to convince her, look, you know, let's go get laid. So she went, and this friend of hers began sitting at the table of a band that had newly arrived in Los Angeles, 5 guys. They were buying her drinks, and she brought Tamra over to get some free drinks. But then this friend saw somebody who looked a lot like her favorite rock star, and off she went, leaving Tamra at the table with these 5 guys. If you know anybody, or you yourself has been a trauma survivor, you know that predators can sense it. They can sense when someone will freeze when they're put into a difficult situation, And these guys could sense that Tamra was vulnerable. And Tamra could feel that they had something on their minds that she did not want to be involved in. So she began to look around for a way to escape. However, her friend stupidly told them the address of where Tamra could be found, inviting these boys to a party that Tamra did not want to have. So now she was really terrified. Tamra had already experienced rape more than once at this point in her life, and she could see what was ahead. She was looking around for some escape, and she saw me. I was somebody who had been raised by Holocaust survivors. I'd been isolated, and I had decided at this point in my life that I had no social contract. Nobody had ever given me a break, so why should I give anybody a break? I decided to become a liar, and I was extremely skilled and used it for power. I was very violent, and I was a thief and a petty criminal and committed mayhem, and I was just a generally bad guy, pulled knives on people and such. She's looking at me, standing off in the corner, scowling. Everybody else is smiling and flirting. I'm dressed all in black from head to toe. And she thinks, maybe that's the guy that can save me from this. Interesting. The head of the manager of the club, Mario, saw her looking at me, and he came over and he said, you look like a nice young girl. Do not talk to him. That guy is bad news. I had a reputation. But this thing continued. She would move around the club, and these guys were like stalking her, following her around. She would turn around and find them whispering to each other, and then they would all smile at her. And by the time 2 a.m. rolled around, she was really scared. She walked outside into the rain and found me standing out there looking at everybody as if they were scum and smoking a black Russian cigarette. And she walked up to me, and I'll never forget it. She looked up at me with those beautiful blue eyes, and she said, I'm in trouble. Please help me. Well, somebody came up to me to ask for help. But something chivalrous woke up in me. I asked her what's going on, and she explained it to me, and it pissed me off. You know, I was like, these assholes, I'm sorry to use French, but they come to my city, and they're picking on this girl from my city, and they're trying to pull something like this. So I said, wait here. I went in the club. She thought I was ditching her, that she was ridiculous. I was getting my drummer. My drummer was a big, scary guy whose idea of a hobby was spending Friday afternoons at a burger joint in Tahunga beating up football players, and people would bet on it. So I came out with my drummer. We followed her, and we followed them. And they tried to lose us at a red light, but red lights didn't mean anything to me. And I wound up sitting on a couch looking out at the city with her while she spent about 2 hours telling me about her boyfriend. She had been with him for about 3 years at this point. He had gotten a great job right out of high school. He had bought a house already. I was sitting there thinking, what have you sunk to, Ronnie? You're sitting here protecting some other guy's girlfriend? Not cool. She would ask me questions, and I would give her grunted one-word answers. Eventually, the guys made their move. They propositioned her and tried to pressure her, and I stood up. She looked at me, terrified that I was going to join them, and that she would really be in trouble. But I told them to shut the F up, only I didn't say F. And they said, there's 5 of us, and there's only 2 of you. And my drummer stood up. And I said, I told you to shut the F up. They said, we'll let you go first. I said, get the F out of here now. And we had a look about us and an energy that said, this won't be a black eye. This is going to leave you hurt. So they started to whine about, but we're guys. You're betraying the whole guy thing. Why would a girl bring us up here if she didn't want to do that? She just is afraid to ask for it. Tamra looks terrified. Anyway, they left. I turned to her and I said, "Are you okay now?" And she said, "No. If you leave, they could just come back." I've been up a long time at this point, and I also really wasn't, I didn't really think she would have any interest in me, nor did I have much of an interest in her, although she was beautiful, because I had a kind of thing going where I had different girls on different nights bringing me money and booze and food and drugs, and I was all booked up, let's put it that way. So I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And she said, "Can I just stay in your place until the sun comes up? Then my brother will be back, and I can go to him, and I'll be safe." And I said, "All right." So she came to my terrible little bachelor that was near the whiskey, and I gave her a pillow and a blanket and said, "You know, you can sleep on the floor." My drummer was already asleep on the couch. He had driven all the way from Sacramento. And I went to my bedroom, which was there was a little curtain, you know, with a mattress behind it. And to my surprise, she knocked on the little wooden column, and I said, "The bathroom's over there." But she walked in and she sat on my bed. And I thought, oh, okay. And so at dawn, we made love for the first time. And both of us were struck by the experience. We were both skilled. That wasn't what it was. It was love. I didn't know it at the time. But she did. And when she went home, her brother's lover, a surfer, had just come back from the beach. And he said, "Oh, you look like you had a good time last night." And she said, "I think I just met the love of my life." Pardon me. It took me 2 weeks. The scariest day of my life, I think, was asking her to move in with me. I couldn't imagine why she would leave such a good situation, somebody she'd been involved with for so long, and who had a house, and, you know, for me, a scumbag. And I thought she was having a fling, you know, but I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to be around the other girls anymore. I didn't even want to be around my band. I just wanted to be around Tamra. To my shock, she lit up when I asked her to move in with me, and she said, "Yes." My friends, it was like the sun came up for the first time in my life on that day. I'd lived an endless night, and that sun stayed up all through 46 years until I lost her. About a year later, we were in Australia, and we were at a wildlife sanctuary. I had bought a garnet ring, and I did not know at the time that garnets were sacred to the goddess Sekhmet, nor did I know that there was a goddess Sekhmet, nor did I know that ibises were sacred to Thoth. But there were pink ibises, of all things, tapping their beaks at this little table we were sitting at. I pulled out the ring and I asked her to marry me. Now, we both knew that we weren't going to really get married. We thought marriage destroyed love. We had talked about it. But I still wanted to ask her. I wanted to be engaged. I just wanted to have that experience and to let her know how I felt about her. And to my delight, she said yes. And then, at the Bodhi Tree Use branch, I found this very early copy of Manly Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. To me, it looked like a tome full of dark wisdom. So I put it on layaway, and eventually I got it home. The first thing I read in it is, "Dedicated to the rational soul of the world." Well, that blew my mind. What is rational about this world, I wondered. I started to read, and every chapter made me feel like, I don't know, like the top of my skull was a convertible car and the top went down, and suddenly my eyes were open to a much wider horizon. And I would be so excited I would run out and tell Tamra everything I had just read, which began a tradition that lasted all our lives of me reading to her, especially esoteric works. We were so moved by how the people in this book had risked death in order to explore these alternative means of finding truth in life and meaning, and even more so had risked death preserving it in writing so that we could have it, so that we could follow their adventures and have our own. So I mentioned this book to a friend of mine, and she said, well, you know, Manly Hall is still lecturing. It's $1 on Sunday afternoons, actually in the morning, 11 a.m. I was afraid to come out here. I knew what I had done, and I had done some very, very bad things. And I figured a guy like that would look right through me. I was also getting ready to move. I had a friend who had gotten way too into Edgar Cayce and was convinced that California was about to fall off the map. She moved her whole family to Virginia Beach and wanted me to go along. But Tamra said to me, aren't you going to feel like a fool? I mean, you love this man's writing. He's really old. If you don't go down there, you might not ever be able to hear him speak. And wouldn't you feel silly for being afraid to? So we came down here. It was a beautiful spring morning. On the way walking up, because you know how the parking is around here, she saw a piece of cracked concrete through which a flower had been suddenly blooming from a weed, and noticed that how beautiful nature can be in that way. We sat down right where you are, and the glorious old man sat in his chair, and he delivered 90 minutes without notes. And he looked right at me, and he said, people who fear natural disasters because of guilt about how they've been living their lives. He looked right at Tamra, and he said, the way that a weed can go through a crack in the concrete and flower into something beautiful. I would find out later that he couldn't see us. He had bad vision at that time, and we were just colorful blurs out in the audience. But yet he did this all the time. When I became his screener, often people came to me and said he delivered a personal message to me. And many people interpreted that as meaning that he was calling on them to become initiates. And I would have to disillusion them. He didn't like to take on students. And so we decided we had to volunteer at PRS just to be around this, to learn. We came down on that following Monday, and they interviewed us, and they liked Tamra. She had office skills. What did I have? I had biker gangs that had been my security. But they did ask me a curious question. Do you know any languages? And I said, not really, but I grew up around French and German and Russian and Polish, so I understand some of those languages a little. I don't speak them. They made a note of it. That afternoon, Tamra got a call. We'd like to offer you a gig. Well, being who I was, I told her, I'm not staying home with the cats while you get to go work at PRS. Forget it. And she said, good, I don't want to do office skills anyway. That's why I got out of all that. But then they called the next day to talk to me. Manly Hall wants to meet you. So next morning I come down here to PRS and I go into the office. He's sitting behind the desk and there are 4 formidable elderly women, 2 on either side of him, standing with crossed arms like this, giving me the skunk eye. He smiles and he says, come on in and make yourself miserable. He's got a stack of paper in front of him. And he says, young man, do you know what a galley is? And I say, no. And he says, a galley is how you make a book. Okay. He says, this is the galley for my alchemical bibliography. You know what a bibliography is? Nope. Well, that is a way that you catalog a collection of books and manuscripts. And I have a very important collection of alchemical and Rosicrucian books and manuscripts. And I need somebody to finish the editing job. And I think it's you. I said, Mr. Hall, that's a great honor, but you're barking up the wrong tree. I am not somebody who has any of the education or skills to take on a task like this. I just learned about alchemy from reading your book like a few weeks ago. He said, no, I feel confident that you're the right one. Why don't you take this galley into the library and look it over and let me know what you think. Well, Pat Irvin, who ran the PRS at that time on the business end, who was a former military officer, must have sprinted around the library because she popped up in front of me and grabbed the paperwork out of my hand and said, "That was a mistake." And I said, "Yes, it was." I said, "Thank you." I get home, and Manly Hall's secretary calls me. "You, Manly Hall, his office, tomorrow morning, first thing." Okay. I show up, and this time it's just him. He says, "Young man, you work for me. From now on, if anybody contradicts what I tell you, you come to me. Now, I am confident that you're the right person to do this. This is how we're going to do it. In the morning, I will show you what I want done. You can have lunch with me in the vault, and you can look at the books and manuscripts, and I will answer any questions you have. And then in the afternoon, I will look over your work. And I feel confident that you'll be able to handle this. So let's get started." My friends, who is going to turn down the opportunity of having lunch with Manly Hall in the vault and being able to ask any question you want? Not me. And so I began to work on this book, The Alchemical Bibliography, and had amazing experiences with him. This was what he called the little world of PRS. On the left, second from left, that's Pat Irvin, who sprinted around and got the paperwork out of my hands and who never accepted me. I mean, the whole time I was here for 7 years, she always gave me the skunk eye. Next to her, smiling up at the camera, is Arthur Johnson. If you listen to Manly Hall lectures, whether the older ones or the newer ones, you can thank him. He's the guy who recorded the newer ones, and he's the one who found the older ones when they were lost. He was also Manly Hall's driver at some times, and he just happened to be one of the most amazing guitar players I've ever met. He was Lena Horne's guitar player and her musical director, and he played with Jeff Buckley. He wrote an album with Judy Sill and was just a brilliant musician, and I think the first Silver Lake hipster. Next to him is Richard. Richard was Manly Hall's bodyguard and was rumored to have been Frank Sinatra's bodyguard. Richard was so adorable with Tamra. He was like a father figure to her. He was very protective of her and would often give her advice. He ran shipping at PRS. And then next to him is Lynn Blessing, who was also a great jazz musician who was a member of the Lighthouse House Band and played with Paul Horn and other jazz luminaries. And he would be binding books and working in the shipping department. Tamra was also working at PRS at this point and would do whatever job was needed, sometimes in the office, sometimes in the gift shop, sometimes in shipping, sometimes in the library. And then there is Marie Hall looking like the captain of the ship. And you can see she's got something on her mind. And you can see how attentive Manly Hall is, because if Marie had something on her mind, you better be attentive. Here we are in the vault, and Tamra and I were there when this photo was taken, and we actually arranged these books and these figures around him in order to signify his incredible knowledge of world culture. This was an amusing experience because what he did was he asked me to get him a book, and he continued to do research for what he was working on and completely ignored the photo session. But you get an idea here of what this vault was like. It was a very compressed little space, but in it we would have conversations about, for example, that triangular book, which was the Saint Germain book. And I was reading about the Rosicrucian manifestos, about Backstrom's alchemical diaries. And then I was holding these things in my hands, first editions of the Rosicrucian manifestos, the actual Backstrom manuscripts with Backstrom's writing. He was an alchemical ship's captain and a rumored Rosicrucian. And sometimes Manly Hall would give me a treat, and he would say, for example, "You see that scroll over there? Hand me one end of it, and then unroll it." And so I unroll it, and it's a Ripley scroll. which is, there's like 5 of them in the world, a masterpiece of alchemical art. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. And he starts telling me stories about Ripley. And my book, American Metaphysical Religion, started in that vault when I pointed at a book that had The Platonist written on the spine. And I said, "What's this?" Picked it up, and it was a newspaper published in St. Louis around the time of the gunfight at the OK Corral. I was astonished that such a thing could exist. And he didn't know much about it either. Very little was known about it at that time. Well, that started me on a very long-term research project that resulted in the book American Metaphysical Religion. I found out a lot about the Platonist. Tamra became close with Marie Ann Manley. So here you can see her presenting to them a gingerbread house that she made herself from scratch. Tamra had transformed into the perfect wife. She wanted to support me in every way and master all the arts that were so associated. And we were invited to the halls for Christmas to have dinner. Tamra bought a teddy bear to give to Manley Hall for Christmas, kind of a koala-looking teddy bear. I said, "Tamra, you can't give Manley Hall a teddy bear for Christmas." "Oh, well, I am." So I told other people. I brought in reinforcements. They all said, "Please, Tamra, you've got such a lovely relationship with the Halls. Don't give Manley Hall a teddy bear for Christmas." She said, "He's getting the bear." We show up, and Manley Hall catches sight of this teddy bear she's carrying, and he exclaims, "Toby!" It was exactly like a teddy bear that he had lost when he was a child. After that, they were tight friends. It also happened that when Marie would go off on her undiagnosed diabetes, sugar spike driven, but very interesting nonetheless, passionate declarations about the world and her philosophy, and she would go on for 2-3 hours at a time, he would make faces at Tamra. He would react to things that she was saying with pretended shock and cause her to give. And then Marie would catch him and say, "Oh, Manley, stop it." It was so much fun. Soon I was pressed into service as a lecturer. I had never done anything like that, and when the idea came up, I didn't want to do it. But I talked to him about it, and he thought it was a good idea. And I said, "Well, I guess I'll use notes." And he said, "No, I don't use notes, you don't use notes." He said, "Don't ever lecture about something where you need to use notes. Only lecture about things that you know." Well, I gave my first lecture on an 11 a.m. Sunday. They put me in the headliner slot right away. Didn't let me have a slow start or something and build up. And I was a hit. Everybody had been wondering, who is this kid hanging around Manley Hall? And suddenly there I was giving a 90-minute lecture just like him with no notes. Of course, I'd listened to so many of his lectures. I was a little bit of a mynah bird there imitating him. And soon I was declared to be his designated substitute lecturer. So since in his advanced age he would not be able to make every lecture, I would be called in to do it. And sometimes it was weird, like when he did one called Marriage in the New World Order. And I visited him at home and said, "Just what do you mean by New World Order?" And he explained it to me, and it was actually quite lovely. So you can actually hear that one on YouTube. He also asked me to work with Marie. He said that somebody needed to translate her work into understandable English. Now, what I'm showing you here is one of a huge pile of these big diagrams that she would do. Marie freely pillaged the worlds of mythology. So in her world, Jesus and Zeus were right next to each other as metaphors for what she was trying to describe. And Manley Hall told me that he considered her to be a mystic in the Western tradition that could be comparable to somebody like Swedenborg. What you're seeing here is part of a series explaining how spirit precipitates matter. But I will share with you a little bit about her philosophy because it's quite interesting. Marie believed that the real deity, the one important deity, was what she called the space mother, was a feminine principle that had created everything. And this was such a selfless and compassionate deity that she allowed her son, the male god, to believe that he was the creator. She drew away and gave him the space and the creative power to ruin her paradise, and he did. And Marie believed that the inequality of men and women in the world was a symptom of this false god. It's a very Gnostic concept. She believed that someday, when things got bad enough, the space mother, which to her was the same thing as the Christ principle or the Buddha, these were all different words for the same thing, would one day awaken, and that women would finally stand up and say, that's enough. And they would do so because of the quality of nurturance and compassion that being women gave them. Let's hope she was right. So Marie and Tamra became quite close. One day, Marie took Tamra aside and she said, Tamra, do not allow Ronnie to follow Manly's path into adoration and then addiction to adoration of his fans. And you will wind up being a shadow figure like I am. She said, they call me Mad Marie. They ridicule my work and say it's nonsense. People act like I don't deserve Manly Hall, that they do. Are you seeing signs of that, Tamra? Well, she was. There were already women coming around pushing her aside and saying, he needs an intellectual. I could really make him into something, not that pretty girlfriend he's got. She also saw on the other side men approaching her and saying, he can't be any fun. Listen, babe, I got some Coke in the car. So she came and told me about this, and it chilled me to the bone. I had already been feeling a sense of the pressure of my success. You know, when you become a successful lecturer, you've got to please the audience. You've got to give them what they want. And I talked to Manly Hall about it, and he said, yes, that's the case. He said, don't you think I would rather be talking about Plotinus? I would love to spend weeks talking about deep concepts of Buddhism, but what people need is self-help. They need to learn how to cope with life, so that's what I have to give them. Well, I didn't have to, and I really didn't want to. I wanted to follow my own path, and I certainly didn't want Tamra to wind up living in my shadow like that, and to have to live with the kind of indignities that Marie suffered. People had noticed that Tamra and I were rather sweet on each other, and they began to picture Tamra as a bride. There were many rumors and lots of sort of affectionate giggles about us, and this idea passed on to the halls. And so one day we were told, Manly and Marie want to see you in his office right now. We walked in, and they were holding our astrological charts. Manly said, come home with us to dinner. We have something very important to talk to you about. And being who we were, we thought, oh God, they saw something horrible in our charts. Well, the horrible thing was, we think you should get married. I said, we come from crazy families, and it's impossible. It would not be a good idea. He said, well, we picked out 2 dates for you to choose from for your wedding. I said, well, that's beautiful, thank you, but that doesn't change the fact that we have crazy families. He said, well, what if we did the ceremony in the backyard under the double tree? There was this amazing tree that grew from one trunk into 2 giant trees. I said, well, that's even more beautiful, but again, it's not possible. And he said, well, what if I did the ceremony? Well, that gave us pause. We said, can we think about it? Of course. So we talked and we decided if Manly Hall and Marie pick a wedding date, and they want to marry you in their backyard, that's an adventure you should take. And so, on a beautiful day in January, which is about 6 days from today, Manly Hall stood out in the sun. It was a very warm day, waiting for us to come out, because he wanted to do the ceremony with the sun in the 11th house. So we would have a supportive network of friends, maybe even an organization. Not Marie. Marie wanted the sun in the 10th house, fame. That way we could make her work famous. Poor Tamra was standing there with Marie grabbing her arm and Lynn Blessing grabbing the other arm, trying to pull her outside. And little old Marie was strong, and there was no way of ripping Tamra free. So the sun's in the 10th house in our marriage chart. And we were married. Such a beautiful day in my life. You know, when you have somebody declare you married as a priest of Melchizedek, it has a ring to it of eternity. He gave us this amazing gift, a midnight scroll of the Buddha with 2 bodhisattvas. And they together gave us this gift, which was foreshadowing our future, but we didn't know it. 3 musicians. We wondered later, did he know? Or was this just a coincidence? There were many synchronicities around him. I've never been anywhere where there were so many synchronicities like there were around that man. It was around then that he declared that we should be his screeners. He started out by asking me, but then Tamra was standing there and he said, you go with him. And Tamra said, but I don't know what to say. And he said, don't say anything. Just watch, and then come back and tell me what you see. Well, guess who became his main screener? Not me. I would say, yes, I think that person's okay, and Tamra would shake her head no, and that person did not get to meet Manly Hall. What it looked like was something like this. We would be affable when we were talking to you, and then we would do this. But it was a tough job, and it was quite an education. We ran into a lot of crazy people, and we got to see the damage that metaphysics can cause to people, any form of it, even the most innocent seeming. There was hardly any kind of metaphysics that didn't deliver some poor, messed up person that I would tell Manly Hall about. He would usually give me advice to tell them, but he would not want to meet them because his time was limited. Tamra and I had been unable to do the kinds of things we were reading about. When we heard about God as being the Lord, the King, we were like, screw that. No. And sometimes a little mysticism talked to us. We liked Buddhism, but we never really found that feeling, and we were envious of people who had strong mystical experiences with the divine. One day I had a dream in which a piece of incense with a lion's head on it was lit on fire in front of me, and I heard the word Sekhmet. I'd never heard it before. I woke up from it and went on a crusade. At first I went to him, what is a Sekhmet? He didn't know. I asked everybody at PRS. I asked everybody at school. He had convinced me to go to Occidental and get a degree, and nobody knew. I went through all the books in the library. Now it turns out I could have found Sekhmet in some of the antiquarian Egyptian books, but the name was spelled differently back then, with an A instead of an E, and I'd never found it. Eventually, I found a line drawing of this goddess, and it explained that this was a very ancient goddess of Egypt, a goddess of justice, a warrior who protected the natural balance that is required for life to exist. But she was not only a protector of the innocent and an enemy to evil and a hater of liars, she was also a goddess of erotic ecstasy and of intoxication. And Tamra and I thought, we're home. Tamra had a profound sense of recognition when she saw this goddess. At this time, even the Bob Masters book was not out. There was no information available. This amazing icon was created by Pitamasu Nofra'ua, an incredible artist, the world's greatest creator of icons of ancient Egypt, and also a wonderful author. And he would like to say a little something about Tamra to you.
Tamra first wrote to me in 2014 when I was birthing my icon, Sekhmet, the Eye of Ra, and I was posting updates on social media. I get a lot of response from people around the world who are attracted to ancient Egyptian religion and deities and who are interested in my work. But Tamra stands out from all of those. From the beginning, she struck me as a different kind of person. She had this vivacious, dynamic energy, but more than that, she wrote to me as a person who was living with Sekhmet, a person who knew that this goddess is real. She's not an archetype. She's not a figment of the human imagination or psyche. She is a living goddess. And Tamra wrote to me some very personal experiences that she had had with Sekhmet. And they weren't boastful. They were about the ways in which Sekhmet had actually stepped into her life at different periods of her life, even when she didn't consciously know Sekhmet as a goddess. I recognized right away that Tamra knows Sekhmet. And even beyond that, that there was something dwelling in Tamra, a spark of this goddess that I know so well. Tamra astonished me, and her work still astonishes me. The way she injects the divine into everything that she does. Even the most seemingly mundane things, Tamra had a way of making those things divine. Being a devotional polytheist, this is something that I have always been struck by. Tamra's ability, no matter what she's doing, to manifest the spark of the sacred, of the gods, specifically Sekhmet. Tamra was committed to everyone and everything in her life that she valued. And she had this ability to touch you, even at your darkest moments. There were times when I was going through personal struggles in my work as an artist and in my personal life as a result. And Tamra had a way of seeing right to the matter and of devoting herself to helping me see how I could continue my work. She had a clarity and an insight and a vision that I can only describe as coming from the divine. I know that the world was a better place because she was Tamra.
Hall approached me and he said, "It's time for you to leave." Can you imagine? I mean, this was my life. This was my family. This was my shrine. This is where all the meaning in my life was. I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I'm going to die soon, and so are the people who run this place, and there will be a terrible battle over the assets, and I don't want you kids to be here." So kind. I thought he was testing my loyalty, so I kept trying to do things for him, and he kept giving me work. But he was quite sincere, And he said, you need to decide what you're going to do. So I would approach him and say, well, I got into Harvard for grad school. What about that? Mm-mm. Other suggestions? Mm-mm. Finally, I said, well, I came from music. Maybe I should go back to it. Mm-hmm. Which shocked me because he didn't think much of modern music. But I still hung around, and he still gave me things to do. But then we screened somebody. We didn't like him. Both of us agreed there was something very creepy about this man. We told him, you should stay away from him. He said, mm-hmm. We came back a few weeks later, and there he was, doing things in the library. We approached Manly Hall's secretary and said, what is this guy doing here? And she said, well, he's getting very friendly with the Halls. Tamra went right in and said, Mr. Hall, I told you, this guy's bad news. And he said, I heard you, I understand. This guy started to take over. It got to the point where you couldn't talk to Mr. Hall unless you talked to him first. Tamra decided to try to warn him one more time. She went into his office and she became hysterical. She started crying and she said, this man is going to harm you. He didn't like scenes like that. He raised up his big hand. Stop. I was mortified. And we left, never to return. The first place we went straight from here was to the Huntington, where we stood before the statue of Orpheus and Eurydice. Never looked back, right? We decided that we would take the hymns of Orpheus and simplify them, and we would perform them in a humble way at our window in the middle of an urban setting in Hollywood. And that this would be our way of thanking these amazing people in this place, because we couldn't tell people we were leaving. I mean, what do? You can't come in here and say, we have to leave because you're all going to die. And we weren't going to lie to our friends. So this was a way of doing inner work to show our thankfulness, and we hoped that it would bring blessings. I had worked with Manly Hall on a reprint of a book by Thomas Taylor of the mystical hymns of Orpheus, and that's what motivated this idea. We did have interesting experiences. For instance, when we did the hymn to Athena, in the middle of the day, in the middle of urban Hollywood, a huge great horned owl landed on the nearest telephone pole and sat there while we did the hymn, and then flew away when we finished, flying right at us. Many such experiences. So at first, I tried to get a band. Now, I had lots of auditions. And this was around the time that hair metal ruled the world. And man, with my goal of bringing mysticism and the mysteries into rock and roll, that was not flying. People wanted me as a singer, but they didn't like where I was coming from. Tamra watched all this. And then after a while, she said to me, Ronnie, if these morons can play guitar, this moron can play guitar. I said, well, if you're going to learn to play guitar, I'll learn to play guitar too. Let's do that. And our new band was born, Cat Cult. And this is what Cat Cult looked like. Tamra refused to do anything but play bass and rhythm guitar. She would not sing. Around that time, we were trying to get the Republicans out of the White House, and Bill Clinton was running, little did we know. But we had gotten an opportunity to get this photo of Holly Woodlawn looking like Marlene Dietrich. And Tamra made this cool poster for a fundraiser that was happening where a bunch of poets were going to read. And that night, we met Holly. She came in and brutally fixated on hitting on me. And Tamra thought it was hilarious and egged her on. Holly thought this was all very cute and invited us back to where she lived in this small room under her manager Teresa's house. And she said to Tamra, come here and sit on the sofa next to me, this little tiny sofa. And Holly said, honey, who's the coolest Rolling Stone? And they both answered at the same time, Marianne Faithfull. Holly starts singing as tears go by. He says, "Sing with me." Tamra says, "Oh, I don't sing." Holly says, "Oh, well, I don't really remember the lyrics. Do you remember them?" And Tamra says, "Yeah." She says, "Well, then sing with me." And to my shock, Tamra starts singing. And that was the birth of Tamra the singer, who would wind up dominating my musical life. And then we met this band of miscreants, Grrrl Jesus. What a great band. We love them so much. They were so aggressive and powerful, but the sweetest, kindest people. And they sang about very important issues. They sang about vivisection. They sang about the exploitation of runaways and of other innocents. And they became, such good friends of ours, and we loved their music so much that we volunteered to be their roadies. So we went from being PRS people to being roadies for a female hardcore band. Now, on the far right, hiding her face, is Margaret Maldonado, who would become Tamra's bass teacher and who will reappear over and over again as we finish the rest of this story. I used to love to go into clubs with Grrrl Jesus because you would see these male bands would smirk and laugh at them and ridicule them. Oh, girls. And then these girls would destroy them. And you'd see them all standing at the far wall looking completely crestfallen. And I would ask them, "How many bands do you think you've broken up?" They knew Revolution Rising. And I'll let Tamra explain what Revolution Rising was.
Revolution Rising is an artists' collective. We're incredibly diverse. We concentrate on truly being equal in our own small collective. We do zines, we do spoken word compilations, we collect food for the homeless, put on fundraisers, promote bands, and promote awareness of society's injustices and how we can adapt and evolve from a not so equal society to an equal society. We don't like saying, for instance, "Oh, we're feminist," because in saying we're feminist, it seems to exclude the males. And plenty of men have experienced prejudice and unfair treatment and abuse, and we want to address that as well. So equalist as opposed to feminist.
You want to come to our first show? This is a little mashup.
Hello! Come over here. Oh, God! Oh, you all look so cool.
Does it look like a mugshot?
It does.
Yeah, right before we were killed.
Tamra, moving closer. Okay, cool. Tell me how you feel. This is your first gig ever.
I fluctuate between excited and annoyed.
I told everybody I'd heard you all and you were great.
Oh my God!
I lied.
It's like after Cobain died, and it was like, we really care, and then nobody talked about it anymore. So it would almost be like, if it was banal, I'd rather fuck up really bad and make it funny.
Okay, I'm gonna do like 3 songs and then I'll bring the camera to you. Thanks. Fucking father. Right on! That's cool. Well, most of
don't. Sing our song about it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, when your dad grew up, and you know why? You're fucking dad! My fucking dad! Mark on the spot, they're all dead too! That doesn't rise in the slaughterhouse! That doesn't rise in the slaughterhouse! That doesn't rise in the slaughterhouse! Internalizing violent flesh, beating yourself death.
We got better. Is Lucretia here? Come on up, girl.
I love that song, The Sun Doesn't Rise in the Slaughterhouse. I remember it really well.
This is the liar.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Ronnie, thanks for letting me. Okay, so I'm just going to read something that I wrote for Tamra and Ronnie and all of us. Okay, Tamra. This might seem to be about me, but it's about her. Her gentleness, her kindness, her generosity, and her political activism through artistry and organizing. She was an artist, a writer, a musician, and a documentary producer. She'd felt belittled by cultural and personal perception of petite blondes, but Tamra was a powerhouse with superpowers. When we first met in 1993, it was at Arts Building Junior in Los Angeles. There was an art show going on there. My friend Art introduced us. I usually feel self-conscious, but somehow I felt totally relaxed just talking about the art with these two totally cool-looking people there, Ronnie and Tamra. I'd rarely seen up close people in person who looked like them, much less expected anyone who looked like that to talk with me. Tamra and Ronnie looked like rock stars, with their wild hair and stylishly outrageous clothes, and they were a couple, daunting. But they didn't make me feel uncool by comparison at all, which was really unusual. I felt immediately connected and welcomed. We talked about countercultural activism through art and about Riot Grrrl. We made plans right then and there to change the world for the better. The first night I went to their house, Tamra told me that some tribes believed direct eye contact was rude. I noticed she usually kept her glance politely directed near me, but not on me. We talked about cat goddesses, mysticism, music. She showed her art to me, and I fell in love with her satirical Barbie collages on pink mat. She promptly gave them to me. She also gifted me with a handmade bracelet. She made it herself. I'm wearing it now. I adore this bracelet. I see it every day. I have it hung up so I can see it every day. I've had it hung up for years so I can see it every day. I see it every day because I want to. It's one of my most treasured belongings. And I think after hearing what everybody was saying, I think it was psychic that she gave this particular one to me because it's as though she just knew every little thing I love. Tamra and Ronnie and I decided to make a zine together. I spent a lot of time with them at their condominium in West Hollywood as we did the cut and paste for several issues of TVI, our zine TVI. And we recorded our conversations about the music videos we watched, which they transcribed for the zine. It was fun. An MTV executive said our zine was the catalyst for their shows on music video commentary. We were surprised at how popular the zine became because we were just three friends making political art sitting on the floor in their living room. They had a green carpet, a china red bathroom, the best iced tea I've ever had. There were cats, regal and luxurious and loved. Tamra and Ronnie formed a band, and I shot their rehearsals and shows. Lucid Nation played at Riot Grrrl shows. Tamra and Ronnie were central to a group a few Riot Grrrls and I co-founded, Revolution Rising, that was just like Riot Grrrl, except it included boys. We held benefits and fundraisers and had zine and sticker tables at various punk rock shows. I interviewed Tamra and Ronnie for a documentary funded by Revolution Rising. I shot that footage we just saw. I just remember it like yesterday. Oh my gosh. And many years later, I interviewed them from my mixtape zines, one about Riot Grrrl LA and another one about groupies. In my earliest days as a freelance painter and scenic, they hired me to paint a wall or two and their patio floor. I worried that I overbid, but they paid me well anyway. But in 2016, when we began to work on a documentary they were producing, our longtime friendship faltered. Their documentary, Girls, Panthers, Punks, was something we were all seriously dedicated to, but we had a lack of communication, which created mutual distrust, and we unfriended. Years and years passed. We didn't talk. I thought about them so often. My memories of times that were painful were counterbalanced by the times that weren't painful. I especially remembered Tamra's encouraging eyes when I was once on a stage like this, which is not comfortable for me, and I was doing sound check. Her compliments of Polaroid pictures that I'd taken of myself in another art show at Arts, she gave me such real compliments, validating my art, validating the way I looked, validating me. And the way she playfully opened and closed my vest one of the last times we saw each other. That she invited me to contribute to her zine, The Good, the True, the Beautiful. And that she and Ronnie invited me to join a Riot Grrrl panel at UCLA with them. These are things that I usually keep private in the memory of my heart. But I'm opening my heart now to share them because they show Tamra's importance to me. And Tamra's importance, period. She was generous, a rare gift. There's no way to express the depth of the importance of these moments for me. It was deeply validating. I, who've been so afraid to be seen, who've imagined being looked at with approval by a rock star. Tamra was such a rock star. If only we could tell these things to people when we have the chance on this earthly plane. Her laugh, her voice, her blonde hair, which was so beautiful, the way Blue Jeans looked on her, and the way she stood at the microphone singing and playing guitar, her appealing awkwardness, her own surprising self-consciousness. Surprising because she was so very cool. How could she ever doubt her own power? Tamra's documentaries are award-winning, her writing published by big names, her music critically acclaimed, and her activism extended from the musical arena of punk shows to the political arena of elections, for example, when she worked with Danny Goldberg to bring influential musicians such as Bruce Springsteen to key counties in Barack Obama's 2008 presidential election. That's pretty big time. The bracelet that she gave to me, that she made by hand, reminds me of Starry Evenings. It's several strands of overlapping beads in black and silver gray connected by a Diamante Art Deco clasp. The bracelet feels heavy and light all at once, and I love the motion and weight of it on my wrist. It gets warmer and warmer the longer I wear it. It reminds me of everything I've deeply loved ever since I was a young girl cutting school and finding refuge in classic cinema and show tunes, finding refuge from the anarchy of my anxiety in the glamour and fantasy and elegance of make-believe and the beauty of the good possible. Tamra's work, her art, her writing, her music, and her documentaries make me believe in the good that's possible because her artistry is activism and her activism is artistry, just like her zine and the name of it, the good, the true, and the beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Ronnie.
Riot Grrrl really inspired me as an artist. I sort of got involved in Riot Grrrl through Revolution Rising, who were at the original Los Angeles Riot Grrrl meeting, the first one. They went from there on their own and started Revolution Rising. Riot Grrrl I also contacted through the computer, because I'm on the computer on America Online. And I met an incredible network of girls through the computer, and a lot of them are Riot Grrrls. Riot Grrrl is very diverse. It means as many girls that are in Riot Grrrl, Riot Grrrl means all those different things. And I also find that a lot of the childlike influence, it sort of represents the childhood abandoned to creativity and fun. I like Riot Grrrl because it's free and it's spontaneous. I'll quote myself and I'll use the language I use, but someone asked, well, what do you think Riot Grrrl's gonna do? And I said, Riot Grrrl can do whatever the fuck they want, and that's it. I see a lot of girls, and they're very empowered, and when they touch Riot Grrrl, it seems it's the first time they've experienced power and confidence, and almost like they get a directness and a center and a focus, and it's really inspiring, and it's really given me a lot of power and confidence to go out as a musician and just as a female. It wasn't so much being technically proficient or an outstanding musician with incredible chops. It was being real. If you had something that you really wanted to say through sincerity, that was enough. And it was an absolutely wonderful, comforting, lovely place to be.
It was life-changing for me. Even though I'd been through PRS and it was a very civilizing influence, I was carrying a lot of damage from my Eastern European heritage, and I learned a lot about what it's like to be a woman in my culture, and it made my blood run cold.
Hi, everybody. I am Chelsea Starr, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tamra in tribute to the role that she played in the Riot Grrrl scene. So who the heck am I? During this time, I was writing a sociology dissertation on the Riot Grrrl movement, which is how I became acquainted with Tamra. To understand Tamra's importance to the Riot Grrrl scene in LA and beyond, you need a little bit of historical context. The World Wide Web, as you know it, did not exist. Internet, as you know it, did not exist. It was all dial-up modem. And when you wanted to use the computer, the phone would give a busy signal to anybody calling. You couldn't use the phone and the computer at the same time. So that's where we were technologically when Tamra appeared on the AOL message board. In 1994, message boards on AOL looked like this. Eventually, AOL allowed people, community members, to make a folder of their own that weren't part of the standard list. However, there was a catch. And the catch was, if nobody posted for 48 hours, it would disappear. And so in 1994, Tamra started one of these called the Riot Grrrl folder. Without coordinating with each other, Tamra and I ended up taking turns posting every 48 hours to keep it open so that people could find it. A lot of girls and young women had access to AOL because their parents subscribed to AOL. By 95, the folder was really well established with 92, and yes, I counted them, 92 regular posters. Courtney Love of Hole, Danny Goldberg, who was then president of Warner Brothers Records, a bunch of people from college radio, many people who were writing zines, a lot of musicians, high school girls, college girls, graduate students, hello, and an unknowable number of lurkers. AOL used screen names. I was Orbit 23. Tamra was Sekhmet 360. The AOL Riot Grrrl folder had people in there asking for submissions to their zines, for music collaborators. They shared information about independent music production. How do I record, produce, distribute, go on tour? There were messages asking about zine distribution, giving address changes for zine distributors. There were bands and college radio people, and they found each other in that board. They would ask advice about gigs and venues. They would talk about all kinds of issues, sexuality, sexual harassment, rigid gender expectations for parents and activities, and more. It was like this big ball of feminist cultural activity. It was music. It was zines. It was organizing. It was Riot Grrrl conventions with self-defense trainings. Tamra was facilitating all of that, all of those connections. Now, I don't mean to say that she was the only one. No, it was an organic whole, but she played a really important part in doing that. By 1995, because of its consistently high traffic, yay, AOL designated that Riot Grrrl folder that Tamra created as a permanent folder. Tamra started something that reverberated into the future. This Riot Grrrl folder connected people from all over the U.S. before Americans had access to the World Wide Web at all. Her actions connected Riot Grrrls from all over. It enabled bands to book tours, learn how to release their music, connecting them with college radio folks, zine makers, and isolated girls who lived in rural podunk USA with a feminism, or as Tamra liked to call it, an equalism that included everything from the most personal manifestations of feminism and fandom to the most activist manifestations in organizing Riot Grrrl conventions and other kinds of activist organizing. Several Riot Grrrl conventions were organized in that folder on AOL, including the 1995 Los Angeles Riot Grrrl convention that I was involved in. Here's one of Tamra's posts in the folder, and it's the bolded part at the bottom that is really, this is the truth and the importance of her contribution. She says, in other words, I act as a conduit for information and context as we meet similar groups in Portland, Olympia, DC, and elsewhere. And above, she's talking about the diversity of the LA Riot Grrrl scene. So there are many other things that I could say about Tamra and her activities in the years that follow, but I will leave that to others. During the Riot Grrrl era of the 1990s, she was a key node in a web of connections that helped girls connect to each other in 1,000 different ways, and I think that is quite a testament to her memory. Thank you, Tamra, for helping that scene flourish. As you wrote in one of your zines about a starfish being thrown back into the ocean to thrive, it mattered to that one. Tamra mattered to many starfish.
Tamra was a guardian angel to me in my punk years. When I was a young teenager, I got jumped by skinheads after my first band, Lime Ricky, played our first show. That was actually the first time I'd been to a punk club. I thought it was going to be a transformative experience where I could express myself in a safe space with other weirdos. My bass player from that band and a friend from school formed a new band after that called Foxfire. We spent a long time practicing before playing out. I had a PTSD from the beating, and a lot of the songs were about that trauma. I was asked to play a show for the release of a 7-inch I had a solo song on, but would have been terrified to play by myself, so it became Foxfire's first show, opening for Lucid Nation. I was still so nervous, I didn't know if punk clubs were always going to be filled with heckling antagonists. I wasn't sure if I was going to get my ass kicked again, and I just hoped for the best. Everybody was so supportive. And then we spoke with Ronnie and Tamra after the show, and it set the course for us as a band. Even though we all knew Ronnie is a great guy, my young Riot Grrrl bandmates and I felt a lot more comfortable with women at the time, and a great thing about both of them was that they understood things like that. Another great thing about us gravitating towards the female force of the band was that it meant getting to know Tamra. Guardian angel might be too weak a phrase. The majority of shows we ended up getting were through Ronnie and Tamra as our connections. They were often our ride to our shows. We even used their equipment once or twice. Tamra had an amazing work ethic and overflowed with creativity. She was smart, prolific, sarcastic, political, brave. She wasn't maternal or sisterly, yet she always made me feel protected, which is a great example to set. To me, she was up there with Patti Smith and Kathleen Hanna as role models. When I went to college, a nice guy named Kevin Doria walked up to me one time and said he'd heard good things about me from Tamra and wanted to know if I wanted to jam sometime. We ended up being in a band together called the Tantrums that gave me pride in myself. On my own, I have consistency problems when it comes to creative output. And both as a teenager and in college, I might not have done half as much as I did if not for Tamra and her influence there in the wings compelling me forward. I'll choose to end my farewell to my old friend here. She was an extremely unique, inspiring, and special person.
There are many things that I could say about Tamra, but I think the most important are that she believed me and she believed in me. I met Tamra when I was 16. It was the mid-90s, so I met her in an AOL forum, which became the online Riot Grrrl chapter. And like so many of the girls, I was coming through something very hard, an abusive relationship, and Tamra was an adult who believed me, and she also believed in my art. She uplifted so many people's art, including mine, musicians, artists, and for me, my writing. I was making zines. She connected me to an incredible project with Hillary Carlip and Francesca Leah Block that uplifted my zine. And then years later, when I published my first novel, a fictional story of a female rock and roller, she provided so many insights. And then she and her band Lucid Nation celebrated with me, and it was the first time we met in person. It was on my birthday. It was one of the most special moments of my life, like meeting someone who was a hero, but more than that, because she was so genuinely there for me. So much love for Tamra and all who loved her. Thanks.
Prisha mentioned TVI zine. Tamra specialized in making hilarious zine covers. I think that's a self-portrait on the Lucid Nation zine. Her work was published in A Girl's Guide to Ruling the World, Taking Over the World, and also in Zine Scene, as mentioned by Stephanie, and in other places as well.
I find that incorporating childhood things like lunch pails, oversized clothes, it's comforting. It makes you feel more at ease with fun, which we're not anymore. We seem to deny ourselves that part of us, and I think that's one of the greatest parts of the human being is fun and creativity and a joyfulness towards life. And I'm comfortable with androgyny. I don't want to be considered female and treated differently because of that. I want to be treated as Tamra.
So, as I said, we got better. This is the song that you heard, Dad, which would become a big hit in college radio, believe it or not. It was number 8 most added, and it ultimately was played on over 400 college radio stations. Here's a mashup of a bit of it.
Okay, you want to do it again?
Ja.
Läuft.
Die zweite.
Well, unfortunately, our drummer, who we loved very much, lived in a bad neighborhood, and a gang member was shot dead at the doorway to her apartment building, and her dad drove all the way from Florida, put her in the truck, and took her home. Dad had his revenge. Lucretia mentioned Tamra's amazing beadwork, and we're going to take a look now at some of Tamra's art. All of these are Tamra's. She began to study indigenous and African beadwork, and she'd be doing this. She's singing punk rock on the side and doing her Riot Grrrl organizing, but she's also doing this meticulous design work. This is her surreal assemblage, which was a tribute to Edward Keenholz. She called it Heidi Doe. It was based on a cheerleader jacket from Chatsworth High that she found in a barrio thrift store, and it had Heidi on it. And so this is a body of Nuit, the Egyptian goddess, but the belly button is a Mercedes emblem, and the little skull head is staring very earnestly at what's dangling at the end of a little fishing pole, which is an engagement ring. The sculpture sits on a dolly, because Heidi's a dolly, and on a padding of unused Kotex pads. Here she is at her first one-person art show. Tamra rarely signed her work. She was really pleased to have a one-person art show, but she never tried to get another one. I don't think she even invited anybody to it. She just thought it was a cool thing. Here's a close-up on those two pieces of work. The one on the right is part of what she called the Autopsy Stamp Mandala series. This was a series that was motivated by a gift of some 1950s autopsy stamps that were used in the LA morgue. And she felt that they had a very bad vibe. They did. They were creepy. And she felt that the people who had been traumatized and brought there and recorded by these stamps were somehow still attached in some way. So she made these gorgeous mandalas out of it. And when she finished the last one, the stamps fell apart. And she said, there, the souls are free. Her tiger's eye. She'd been doing these kind of abstracts since middle school. The first time she showed one to her teacher, she was sent to the nurse for a drug test. You can see the development here of that style. Look how meticulous the work is. She begins these dimensional explorations. There's quite a number of these. Then she adds color. And here she's going into an almost Jungian kind of approach to mandala making. We did get a new drummer who was the founder of Orange County Riot Grrrl, who introduced us to an incredible scene in Santa Ana around Coos Cafe. And the organizer of these Sunday matinees that were the best experiences I ever had as a musician was somebody by the name of Jay Lee, also known as Peace Punk. And he's going to tell you a little something about Tamra.
Hello, this is Jay Lee from DIY Zine. I just want to give my much respect and love to Tamra from Lucid Nation. During the late 90s, there was a DIY space venue called Coos Cafe in Orange County. And I remember booking Lucid Nation there and also organizing events. And Lucid Nation would always bring zines. And besides playing, they would talk on stage. Even when they're not playing, I remember the band members will do a workshop and network and talk to people. We have many, many fun memories there. It's been so many years that I can't remember everything. But all I remember was it was really fun and educational. Fundraiser, beneficials, money went to all different good causes. Once again, thank you, Tamra from Lucid Nation. Much respect.
A couple of posters from that era. On the left is Coos Cafe, the Black Panther show featuring Sharif Abdullah, the defense minister of the Panthers, who became a friend of ours. And then on the right, we actually played International Women's Day celebration at International Panther headquarters. We learned a lot from the Panthers, and they were very kind to us. I'll never forget them buying our little cassette demo, which had glitter butterfly stickers on it. And they wound up giving us a great review in the Panther newspaper. They also got hold of this zine that we had done with some of our friends in Revolution Rising. They liked it so much that they made copies themselves and distributed it to prisons all over the western United States.
You feel like a more integrated human being because of the diversity. You have a relationship with so many different cultures and so many different lifestyles, and you feel healthy as a result of it.
Thing was fun. And you can see in this picture, we were doing a lot of politics and a lot of activism, and we were working in the Food Not Bombs kitchen to help feed the homeless. But look at the smile on that girl's face. She was having fun. Tamra was really happy in this new band because sometimes our drummer wanted to get up and play a song, play guitar, so Tamra got to play drums. And she was quite a good drummer. Here's a minute of it. Keep in mind that this was the girl that was silent. This was the girl that thought she was stupid. This was the girl that was just going to be a housewife and I was going to be a lecturer. And look what she turned into. We did a national tour that we set up ourselves through fans and bands that we loved. Here's the poster from our first show at Hazard House. Please note, no booze, drugs, or jerks. But you know who showed up? The cops during our set. And it was our very first show on a national tour, and they were going to impound our gear. But when they found out we were leaving town that night, they let us keep it. When we got to New York City, Dad had his revenge again. Our drummer decided that that was enough. I think it was a 24-hour drive that we did between gigs. And she flew back home to spend Father's Day with her dad. We had 3 shows left, including one in New York. We were in a panic. So we called everybody we knew, and they all said the same thing. Tia Sprocket, call her up, get her. So I called her up, and this woman answered who had a kind of Bugs Bunny accent, because she was from Hoboken. She was off tour with Luscious Jackson, and she learned all our songs in 45 minutes and said, I'm feeling this sense of deja vu. Do you guys feel that? Yeah. So we played the shows with her, and suddenly we were a way better band. She said to us, you know, why are you guys playing this punk rock shit? She said, you guys are rockers. She said, you're good. Like, Ronnie, you're a good lead player. How come you're not playing leads more? Well, we were really intrigued and impressed because of her incredible pedigree as a musician. She could play any instrument. She was a great singer. And so we asked her to come live with us in LA and start a new band. Unfortunately, Caroline couldn't be here. She woke up feeling sick, and she was going to tell you some things about Tia, which I cannot tell you because I didn't know Tia as well as she did. This is what the band looked like. You may remember I mentioned Margaret Maldonado. There she is on the left. And this was a really tremendous band. Danny Goldberg spent a bunch of money on it. It was the closest that Tamra ever came to selling out. Danny had told her, if you give me 3 years, I'll make the band famous. But then when he described what she would have to do, the repetition, the don't give this reporter anything different than you give that reporter, Tamra was like, Also, we were booked to play ASCAP's South by Southwest to actually headline their showcase. And 2 of the girls in this band, and I won't say who they were, they got into it with each other, and they both quit the band. I pleaded with them, saying, it's Danny Goldberg, the manager of Nirvana. Like, just give me a year. And Tamra said, don't talk him into it. I don't want to do this. So we got this record out of it. It was an Alternative Press Top 100 in 2002. And then we got a second record, Suburban Legends, which was all improvised. But our improvs were not freestyle jamming. Like, we tried to do something that Tamra had heard about from Manly Hall, Zen circle painting. Her adaptation of that idea was, what if we made a song that sounds fully arranged, but we did it together in the moment? And sometimes it didn't work, and sometimes it was magic. We sounded so much better than we were. Now, I want to give you an example of how Tamra would use music. So after that band broke up, Tamra felt like, I don't like this whole band idea. I like the Band of Gypsies idea that Jimi Hendrix had. Like, if there's musicians in town we want to play with, let's play with them. But I don't want to try to hold a band together. Some friends of ours opened a club called Club PCH in San Pedro. And they wanted us to play one of the opening shows. So we drove down there to check it out. On the way back from this very bleak industrial area in just really bleak, Tamra freaked out in a way that I'd never seen her do before. She became crazy about the idea that a stray bullet was going to kill her. I thought about it as I was driving, and I thought, Tamra, that place looks just like where you were almost killed. And she realized that it did. So I said, forget the gig, we got to cancel it. And she said, no. She said, if we cancel the gig, then that son of a bitch who attacked me wins. She said, let me think about this. This is what she came up with. We're going to cover the notorious Richie Ramirez murder song, Night Prowler. We're going to mash it up with the Sonic Youth Predator song, Pacific Coast Highway. I'm going to wear a hoodie that says Terror Worldwide for all the girls like me who've gone through this, and especially for the ones who didn't survive. And I'm going to sing it, imagining that I'm hunting that guy down and I'm going to kill him. She delivered the song with the musicians she got together, and when she finished it, she threw back the hoodie and her blonde mane flew all over, and she had a grin on her face. The catharsis was so liberating. She was glowing, and we were all amazed. And it showed us a way to do music that was therapeutic, it was shamanistic, and very powerful. And that led Tamra to wanting to study martial arts. She had decided that this was a world where a girl needed to know how to fight. And so I want to introduce Voice Rogers, who originated this form of martial arts and was Tamra's teacher. Since this is going to take a moment, I'm going to tell you a story about Tamra's martial arts. So we happened to be in Tacoma, Washington, mixing a record at the time that 9/11 happened, and we were stuck there. Tamra said, well, let's go see if there's a record store open. And we found one, shockingly, that was open. And we went inside and looked around. Well, some poor guy that was probably high on crack came in. He was really messed up. He wanted to rob the place, and he started screaming at the old man who was the proprietor. It was a very frightening situation. Tamra walked in between him and the person who walked in between him and this person that was trying to attack him, and she took her stance. The guy started screaming at her, of course, and Tamra went like this, like Bruce Lee, and the guy ran. And later, Tamra said to me, "Aw, I wanted to try it out."
Hello, everybody. Hello. Come on now, give us some energy. This is fantastic. Come on. Let's start off like this. How do I say goodbye to what we had? All the good times that made us laugh outweigh them bad. I thought we'd get to be forever, but forever's gone away, 'cause it's so hard to say goodbye to Tamra. Yes, that's my Tamra. Kukwaduenya African kimarikani kutie kivule. Ingumi afyana zoweze jumuiya. Wapi kufundisha kwa asilia avitisana. Jina leangu ni mfalme Bwana. Now that backwards Swahili I just spoke to you is loosely translates as "Welcome to the World African American Shadowboxing Health and Fitness Association, where we teach the original martial art. And I am the Royal Grand Master." And Tamra didn't care about none of that. Tamra saw me teaching at Crunch Fitness, a kickboxing class, and we were sparring. So I would fight everybody. The way I teach people to fight is you had to fight me, even my children. All their life, they had to fight me. Well, Tamra comes up and says, I don't care about all of the other stuff. I want to learn how to fight. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. So she paid like for 5 sessions in advance, and then I found out that Tamra was paying $90 an hour for me, and they were only paying me $45. And so I say, where do you live? She says, I live about 10 minutes away from here. I say, looky here, you give me $55 and I'll come to your house. But you gotta buy 10 in advance. She didn't hesitate. So, as I stated earlier, Tamra wasn't really that into Black American history, but she was into Black history. And by Black history, I mean the ancient Egyptian mysteries. And I'm thinking I'm the guy who knows this stuff, right? But I had never heard of Sekhmet. And Tamra gave me an education that's a part of the feminine aspects of Amun-Ra, but the goddess of war. And I'm here teaching her the warrior arts. So I was very pleased with her having that insight. And later on, okay, so I am the founder of this art. And the art really is the U.S. Black resistance martial art of the American Maroons. The most famous American Maroons that you might have heard of, it would be the Black Seminoles. But there were Maroons in the Great Dismal Swamp. You could say that New Orleans was a very popular area. The Gullah Geechee, the Yamasee, they all collaborated, Native American tribes, with the escaped Africans. And that is where we get the Black Seminoles. Okay, but Tamra told me that after I was teaching her this history of the art, because you know when you learn any art, Japanese, Chinese, or Korean, you got to learn the history and the philosophy of their culture. So I'm teaching this Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, and I'm telling her about James Beckworth and all of this, right? She says, you need to tell my husband about this stuff. And I told her, well, I already got I'm writing a script, and it's the history of this art, right? And so I think Tamra might have been talking to Ronnie, but she had encouraged me to talk to Ronnie about my script. But Ronnie was working on several things at the time, and he was very busy. And then one day I came, and Ronnie says, why don't you bring me the research that you've been doing? So I brought Ronnie the research, and this was 2001. Ronnie wrote, he was so excited about all the research I did, even some of the dialogue of the film is actual words, the dialogues of history. And Ronnie was so intrigued with it, he said, you know what, I'm gonna help you with this. 2001, Ronnie wrote the first draft of what, I guess, Ronnie, I guess we'll call it the working title, huh? Yeah. Freedom Fighter is the name of the script. And so Ronnie helped me through that. And then in 2017, I rewrote the final draft, and we are now, right now in 2026, being offered, they want to take the script and make it a series. And I'm like this, we've been waiting from 2001 to 2026, whatever you say. This is the people with the money, you got whatever y'all want to do with it, that's what we're doing. And then Ronnie explains to me that that's how it works sometimes, because you know he's a little bit more involved on that technical side of getting things done in Hollywood. And so I'm just a guy who does research and been teaching this since I was 15 years old. And I wanted to get this message out to people. And, you know, pretty much like this, I'm the black man, right? So I want to make sure that my black culture, the black community, never stops fighting for their rights and their freedom. And that's what this whole scenario is about. And that's what the whole martial art was about. So I'm going to tell this part of the story and then I'm done. Tamra wanting to learn how to fight. She didn't understand how I actually gave people confidence. It didn't matter if it was my Navy SEALs that I trained, or my Marines, or my boxers that went to Olympic trials or whatever. I always put them in the corner, and you don't get out of the corner unless you fight me out the corner. Well, this didn't set right with Tamra, because I didn't know at the time all of the things that Tamra had gone through. So I put Tamra in the corner like I put any other woman that I trained to fight, because I always taught this. You do not know self-defense if you can't fight nobody off of you. Learning the moves is nice, but you're just a dancer. If you can't fight somebody off of you, you're not doing self-defense. It's going to take some fighting. So I put Tamra in the corner, and I started punching at her. And so she thought it was cute. Oh, this is fun. No, sweetheart. I slapped her in the face. I'm going to slap you again if you don't stop me from doing it. And why did you do that to me? I've never done anything to you. No, fight. This is the part of the lesson that I either lose a student or I gain, or my student gains confidence in their ability to do what I teach them. So I'm fighting her, and she is covering up. Fight, stop covering up. So I made Tamra so angry. I pissed her off so much. She hit me with a punch harder than she ever hit me before. But it was the kick that made me take a step backwards, that left a bruise on my body for a week. That's how angry she was with me. But then I saw the smile on her face. Like the smile said, did I do that? Yes, you did. Yes, you can. And I'm 200-some odd pounds. Back then I was a little heavier. And I said, and you just made me get up off of you. I did not do that myself. You did that. And you should have saw the smile on her face. That's my time. I get it. Thank you for having me, Ronnie. Tamra is one of my special, what we call her, Imwanafunsi Imwalimu. That's assistant instructor. She was one of my women's self-defense instructors. And she was definitely a gift to my entire organization. Thank you.
I want to tell you, all right. I want to tell you one little story about that. Voice does not allow you to break session. And one day he was teaching Tamra, and Tamra saw a hummingbird hit the window. So she broke session. The hummingbird's laying on the ground looking dead. As she's walking out, Voice is saying, "You're going to be doing push-ups." She went outside, she picked up the hummingbird, she held it to her heart. She whispered to it. She breathed hot air on it. She felt it move, and she held out her hands, and the hummingbird flew away, and Voice said, "No push-ups." Oops. So we're returning to Tamra's art here as she got really into color. She had different phases of her art. I love these in particular.
This one glows in the dark. She had a whole series of glow-in-the-dark ones that had this kind of artificial animation when you see them. They seem to be moving. This is a birthday present that I received. The amazing thing about her art is that she to just make these things and then put them in a black garbage bag and hide them in the closet. And I didn't know how many there were. With the help of some friends, we started to go through all her stuff after she left us, and we were stunned at her creativity and the beauty of her work. So Tamra was being interviewed around 2000 by Ruby Slipper Zine, and we couldn't find a drummer. We'd gone through it for a couple of years. It was awful. We'd get people out of schools, and we'd say, "Can you play a blues shuffle?" Nope. This girl loved Tamra, and she said, "You know, my girlfriend is a drummer, and she says she likes your band, and if you ever came to Seattle, she'd play a gig with you." Tamra was cynical by now. And she said, "Really? Has your girlfriend ever been in a band?" And Diane said, "Yeah, she was in Hole." And Tamra said, "Patty?" And she said, "Uh-huh." Well, Patty Schemmel had disappeared. No one knew where she was, and suddenly here she was offering to play with us. Tamra said, "Forget playing a gig. Let's do a freestyle recording session up there. Like, do you have the guts to do that?" "Yeah, I'd love to do that," Patty responded. "In fact, I want to talk to my brother Larry. I think he'd want to do it too." And then Greta Brinkman, who played with Moby and with L7, she joined us, and we had the best recording session of our lives. This was the band. You can see me being photobombed by the studio dog. And it was amazing because there was a Woody Guthrie exhibit from the Smithsonian that was in the museum at Tacoma at the time. So in the morning, we would go get coffee and we'd go look at the Woody Guthrie stuff, and then we would come back and we would record. And it was an amazing record. To our shock, it became a #1 record in college radio. You can see here that we were above the Breeders and Pixies and Amy Mann, big artists, and we were a DIY label. I'm sure having Patty in the band helped. But it was also a very political record where Tamra really described the disillusionment of America at that time. And many of her lyrics foreshadowed 9/11, which happened shortly after that in startling ways. After that, we became interested in home recording. Home recording had many advantages. For instance, you could record your vocals while your cat was bothering you for food, as you can see in this picture. Now, this was me way back in the day. And my Holocaust survivor parents were very practical. You can see there's a Star of David in the window, so the Nazis didn't have to come paint one. And I had this skeleton and this pumpkin that you could plug in and it would glow. These were my friends, like my only friends, really. And I would hide in the closet with them when my parents were asleep and talk to them. And the gist of the conversation was, "Ronnie, please stop staring with erotic attraction at the poisons and the cabinets in the kitchen. Life will be worthwhile. You just have to survive this." Tamra knew that story. And one day when I went out to get supplies, when I came home, she had done this in our rehearsal recording room. You know, I want you to think about the love, the depth of what she did there. It meant that every time I walked into that room, I was going back into that spirit closet that kept me alive. And they're still there, and have given me great solace in her absence, just to know that she thought of that and that she did that for me, that she was talking to that poor, isolated, suicidal child so many years later. What a girl. You could sing to the whole city in your living room. You'd have parakeets on your recordings. She loved that. You could put up your idols behind you, your inspirations, Iggy Pop, Patti Smith, Gertrude Stein. You could wear outfits that you wouldn't ever wear in public because they were too precious to you. This is a black velvet Morticia dress by Karen Dusenberry. But you may notice that Tamra is wearing a hermetic cross. It's a miniature version of Manly Hall's hermetic cross. It was a gift given to her by a Freemason with Manly Hall's blessing. These things were too precious for her to take to a live gig for fear of losing them. This is a little sample of what we sounded like at that time, recording this stuff for ourselves. Check out the lyrics. This is before Trump ever ran for office. So this was strange because there was no music business at this point, in a sense. And what we did was we would put this out on social media. And when Trump was elected the first time, we had a huge response in Mexico, over 1 million streams of the songs that we wrote. And so we became specialists at making fun of him. We were approached by some filmmakers who were trying to make a film about Mia Zapata and the Gits. And Tamra had always thought of Mia as a sister because Mia had been assaulted and she did not survive. Steve Moriarty, the drummer of the Gits, knew Tamra and suggested the filmmakers approached her to see if we could get finishing funds to finish the film. Tamra did more than that. She brought in Kathleen Hanna and Joan Jett to be in the film, and then she got Danny Goldberg to put in the finishing funds. The film is now being re-released and is available on various platforms and can be seen in some theaters. Here's a little bit of the teaser.
I was going to sign this band. They were going to be on Atlantic Records.
There's this really great singer, you have to see her.
Oftentimes in the history of popular music, women artists take a while for really their influence to be felt.
We so, respected and admired and looked up to them and, just thought they were the shit.
It's a ripe time for the Gits' influence to be felt and Mia's influence because a new generation of artists are taking from Mia without even knowing they're taking from Mia.
You see this rapport and how close they were. I mean, it really had to be devastating.
And their career was stopped. Steve Moriarty had the idea that he wanted to record a signature Mia Zapata song, Second Skin, with Tamra singing and with us backing him up. And so we arranged to do that in our recording studio. John, are you here? Yeah. Come on up.
So, it's been very wonderful, you know, and I'm a little out of it. I drove from Auburn through like the Thule fog all the way to the Grapevine, so I'm a little, I'm all right. So first I wanted to say that how I met Ronnie and Tamra was I had been in a band that had broken up, so I went back to school, and this was in 2000. I got tired and bored with that, so I put in an ad in the Recycler Classifieds, you know, saying that I played bass and put a bunch of bands that I didn't think anyone would know because I didn't want to waste my time, you know, going to, you know, try out for people. So I get a phone call, and it's Tamra, and she's like, I already sent you an email, and the email was basically a lot of what Ronnie was saying, you know, like, with all the success and the band and having a home set up, you know, for, you know, rehearsing anytime. And so, and then I had asked her about cover songs, and that's when she had told me about the Night Prowler with PCH, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So the date that the email came was October 30th, 2000. So I get there, and Tamra welcomes me in, and Ronnie says, would you like some coffee? And so then, oh, by the way, we need to get a drummer now, too. So it was just the three of us, and so mainly we just started talking about music and likes and dislikes and things like that. But the main thing that we talked about, because it was, I think, probably like the 7th of November or something like that, but the weirdest thing had happened in Florida. We had an election, and they had these hanging chads and all that stuff, and so we were, you know, talking about how insane and weird that was, and that was like the beginning of the crazy millennium that we seem to be having. So, anyways, that was in 2000, and then like when they went up to record in Seattle, we kind of lost track of each other, and I wasn't on social media or anything like that, but so then, and it was actually perfect timing, the way Tamra can be perfect. I was living in Bakersfield. I was in the middle of a divorce and didn't really have anybody, but I did reach out to Tamra about something different, and then she said, hey, we're gonna be, you know, doing this movie, and we're gonna do, you know, like 2 songs. So, sorry, I'm not a normal, you know, I like being in the bass in the back. I can back you up, you know, being the front person, a little difficult for me. So anyways, so I got invited, and it was like, you know, it was the best thing, because it was, you know, I drove up there and drove back all the way up into the hills to the familiar room that just is so so full of energy. And so let's see. Okay, I'm almost there. Okay. Okay, so this is what I wrote. So Ronnie had asked me to talk about this night, because this night was kind of a very electrical night. And I hadn't seen them for like about 4, maybe 5 years. And so Tamra messages me, and she says, like, Ronnie and I are co-producing a documentary on the Gits. It's going to be released in a month. And to commemorate, we want to record a couple of Gits songs. And we only got through Second Skin, and I asked Ronnie too, he can't remember what the other one was. And Steve was there, and I met him, and it was the first time I met Justin, and then also Darren, who's here. And so we all kind of, hung out for a little bit, and then we're like, okay, let's get started on this. And Steve was having a real hard time, kept having a hard time with this one drum part, and he was really upsetting him. But everything was sounding fantastic, and it's just in this little room, and Darren had, set the mics up perfectly to capture it. If you've heard the song, the version, it's one of the most favorite things that I've ever participated in. So, so then we keep going, and we keep having to take breaks because Steve's having a hard time, and he's going into the bathroom. It was very emotional for him, and it just was a very, very intense session. Like, it just was like the energy kept building, and Tamra was just like amazing, and it was, and you can, if you listen to it, you'll understand why Steve was getting upset, because he was like, we came back and I said, hey, why don't you do the drums this way and skip that part, and we'll just go straight through and see how it sounds. So he did that, and then he got up, went to the bathroom again. And we're like, oh, is he doing okay? And then we hear the door shut and hear a car go, and we're like, did he just leave? And luckily that last take was actually all we needed. And then I slept on the couch with the cats, and I think it was the next morning when Ronnie came down, he told me that Steve had said that Tamra was Mia, and it was too much for him, so that's why he had to get out of there. And it was really fantastic. And then I can't remember if it was Ronnie or Tamra told me like the next day that Steve's house burnt down that night too. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a mind blower of a session, and I feel so proud to have been asked, and it was at the perfect time for me because I was going through some. Always seems like a lot of people said I was going through bad shit, and then Tamra just popped up and made it all better, So, so I still consider myself in Lucid Nation, and 25 years of friendship, and I miss her. I think that's all I can really say.
The thing that touched me about that session was I remember Steve closing his eyes when he was playing. I heard him say to Tamra, when I close my eyes, I feel like Mia's in the room. It was sad. Tamra branched out from her zine writing, and she became an interviewer for Utopia magazine online. She was an incredible interviewer. You can see here a few of the interviews that she did. And one of the things that was unusual about her is she tended to become friends with the people that she interviewed because of the depth of the interviews that she did. She broke a lot of the rules of interviewing. She would get very personal. She would talk about her own life. And often she did these interviews at our kitchen table. So I got to meet incredible people. We became good friends with John Trudell, for example, and learned a great deal from him. And John once said of her that she was probably the most intelligent woman he ever had the privilege of speaking with. This turned out to be our last show. I'll just play a little bit of it. This was the one that Stephanie talked about earlier in this presentation to celebrate her birthday and the release of her book, I Want to Be Your Joey Ramone. You can see here the band of Gypsy's style and how Tamra's style had shifted, but not the content.
Susie here? You can sing it with us. I mean, you guys can sing it too, because it's really easy, and it'd be really nice. And this is our way of sticking it to the man.
She volunteered to help any way she could, and they made her the digital archivist for this film, which meant that all the raw footage from all of the occupies all over the United States were sent to Tamra. And we got to see all of it. And then she would bin it by city, and then the directors involved in this would be able to come and take what they needed. There's a little bit of the teaser.
We're going to be out here as long as it takes to see change in this country. And I told them, you're going to be here a while.
Occupy Wall Street is a movement where we elevate ourselves, the people of the world, as equals in power with the 1%.
The top 1% have experienced dramatic income gains over the last 30 years. Most Americans have not.
Tamra sang in a song. She was poached by Reality Sandwich to continue to be an interviewer, and she interviewed presidential candidates. She interviewed Amy Hale about the right-wing pagan problem, and interviewed Robbie Kenner about Food Inc. at our kitchen table. It was such a great education, and the wonderful Beehive Design Collective. Reality Sandwich was a website that was loved by people that were involved in the Burning Man culture. You heard that she helped to bring Bruce Springsteen into counties that needed to be won by Barack Obama. And she basically called Danny Goldberg and said, "Are you working on this campaign?" And he said, "No, but I'd like to." And she said, "I've got a surrogate. Maybe we can do something." And the surrogate said, "Bring us big artists to these counties." So Danny said, "Tamra, just use my name and call up their management and tell them." I remember her calling Bruce Springsteen's manager and telling them, "We need him at this place in Philadelphia and a few others." The manager said, "Well, we can't get the band together fast enough." And Tamra said, "Fuck the band, just send him out there with an acoustic guitar." The manager said, "Well, we had discussed that." And she said, "Don't talk about it, do it." There's the result. Here's Danny.
Hi. I want to say hi to everybody who's remembering Tamra Spivey, Tamra Lucid. I first got to know her under her screen name Sekhmet, after the Egyptian goddess, who's generally depicted as having the head of a lioness, an appropriate pseudonym. She was such a source of encouragement to me over the decades, particularly after Kurt Cobain died, on the ancient message board Velvet Rope, when she stood up for me, and later connected me to the Gits movie and got me involved, and gave me the honor of writing an introduction to her book, Making the Ordinary Extraordinary, a few years ago. Tamra just had such an exquisite integration of activism, metaphysics, spirituality, and the art of friendship. I'm envious of those in the heaven worlds who get to hang out with her. In fact, Tamra, I think I'll talk to you. I'm envious of those in the heaven worlds who get to hang out with you, and I look to you to send me insights during the rest of my time on this planet. Much love to Ronnie and everybody there.
Then she began to work along with me on a movie called Viva Cuba Libre, about the amazing hip-hop poets Los Aldeanos. Here's a little bit of the teaser.
Yo, con el permiso de los zafiros y el debido respeto, esta vaina hermosa goza también de otros secretos, los cuales no aparecen en ningún centro turístico, porque hay que mantener la imagen de sitio magnífico.
Que es el corazón de todos los cubanos, que dice la verdad, y la verdad no ofende, pero duele.
Pegado, sé que esto me puede cortar la poca libertad que tengo, pero no me interesa.
Temo por ello, porque han habido muchos jóvenes ya que han perdido la vida.
¡Suelten a mi mamá!
De la vista gorda con la realidad, que me censuren y repriman, voy a seguir diciendo la verdad. Pueden negarme 400 viajes más, su final llegará. La gente está viendo su marico.
Cuba, he watched the crew being arrested. Then Tamra worked on this film. Edward James almost recorded the narration for it at our recording studio. And when he came up the first time, he's walking up the driveway and he sees Tamra down on her hands and knees wearing white gloves crawling around these cars. And he says, "Girl, what are you doing?" She says, "I'm trying to find a baby mockingbird that fell out of its nest. Do you want to help?" And he did. And they found the baby mockingbird, and Tamra put it back in the nest. And that mockingbird used to come around and hang out with her. It was adorable. Here's a little bit of that.
In the 1990s, America opened its borders in the name of free trade.
and invited millions of Mexicans to emigrate for a better life. But on September 11th, all that changed. Mexicans were no longer welcome. The U.S. began a program of mass deportation. To date, over 6 million Latinos have been deported. Rejected by America, rejected by Mexico, they struggle to survive along the border. This is where they end up.
I left my wife, my 2 kids, my entire family lives in the States. I have no one here in Mexico.
Cry every night. I dream about my kids. There's nothing I can do.
This is the way we're living now, in the river. Nobody cares for us.
There are hundreds of people living in the canal, and their life expectancy is not long.
Again, Tamra sang in a song, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But I want to point out how unusual that somebody who worked to elect Obama then saw the horror of this policy and turned around and did a documentary criticizing it. And ultimately, it did help these people. This is the director of that.
Happy New Year's Eve from Chicago. My name is Charles Shaw, and I'm an author, journalist, filmmaker, and a longtime collaborator with Tamra and Ronnie. I just wanted to share my gratitude for everything that she brought to my life. I've known Tamra since the early aughts when I met her and Ronnie while I was publishing an online magazine called Newtopia. And over the years, we continued to collaborate, including on Exile Nation, the Plastic People, which was one of the most exciting and utterly tumultuous experiences of my life. I will always appreciate Tamra's sensibilities and the way that she would follow a conversation as she would circle the room, rarely, if ever, directly engaging or making eye contact, but just at the right moment would drop the perfect piece of wisdom in there. I'm sure other people's testimonials are much more eloquent. The one thing that I wanted to touch on was how I felt hearing the news of her passing and hearing the suffering that she was experiencing. And, I'm hesitant to engage in anything that starts to approach the kind of extremist language that we're hearing these days. And I don't mean to sound melodramatic by using a term like martyr, but in the spirit of those who have died for causes, and in the spirit of those who have taken on the suffering. Let's not let them get away with this. Let's remember who we are and why we're here. Tam, I hope that you are at peace wherever you are. And Ron, it's beautiful tributes that you've been putting out. And your strength and resiliency is admirable, and I hope you're doing okay, brother. I love you both. Sorry. I loved our time together, and I just hope we can all create a better tomorrow, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So thank you for giving me this brief moment of attention. Take care of yourself and each other.
Trante washde nape chiu zapi. Washdewi Young Imachiapi. Ia Wosla Imataha. Daya Yahi. Hi everyone, my name is Washdewi Young and I come from the Standing Rock Nation in North and South Dakota. I greet you all with a handshake and a good heart. I'm honored to be here today. I met Tamra when she produced the documentary The End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock. This documentary detailed my family's struggle against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016. Since then, we became friends on social media and would often send each other encouraging and positive messages. I know that she is here with all of us today, watching over us, protecting us, and guiding us, especially her beloved Ronnie. In the Lakota way, we come from the stars and we return to the stars. I know she is dancing among them with her ancestors and friends who have gone on before. We will see her again. Daya Omani, travel well, my friend. We will see you again. I love you. Doksha Ake Wachiankikte.
For years, people have fought this struggle, fought for our land and water. And I was at a point where I felt like nobody cared. We're just people from here that stood up and asked everybody to come and stand with us. And they did.
The original pipeline was to go through North Dakota, but it was going through white people's land. So they redirected it, put it through the Indians.
What it all comes down to is wanting clean drinking water for our children.
One family. If we don't stand, who will?
And we are peaceful, prayerful people, but it's come to a point now where enough is enough.
Love is the strongest.
The world is run by corporations now. Who's kidding who? Democracy.
Our prayers would not be needed. Indigenous wisdom unheeded and sacred things depleted.
Are you telling the dogs to bite the protesters?
What is the fossil fuel? Continued destruction, nothing new.
I hear the rubber bullet. I see this one just coming straight for my eye.
Taking our children, shifting their feelings till nothing's true.
Tamra's last film, and it was nominated for an Emmy and other awards and won some of them. Tiffany, we're gonna put you up after this next speaker. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay, make it happen. Thea Wershing.
Thanks for having me, Ronnie. Okay. So my primary connection to Tamra came through editing her memoir, Making the Ordinary Extraordinary, my 7 years in Occult Los Angeles with Manly Palmer Hall. But our relationship didn't start there. I had been aware of Tamra for ages because she used an icon of Sekhmet as her social media avatar. So she was clearly some type of cat priestess like me, raging at the patriarchy and calling out all the world's creeps before such things were even fashionable. One day, a mutual friend of ours said, "There's this guy you've got to meet, Ronnie. He works on American esoteric history like you." Meeting Tamra and Ronnie together felt like a kismet. We had all been active in the Riot Grrrl movement, Tamra and Ronnie, of course, with their band Lucid Nation. Me as a young teen discovering and embracing feminism. We knew the secret history of the United States as scholars of occult America. And we had a shared reverence for an ancient Egyptian lion-headed goddess, the fierce warrior Sekhmet. I had been ordained as Sekhmet's priestess on the date 10-10-10. Ronnie and I even had matching Ptolemaic-era Sekhmet pendants, which I now know means we both got scammed by the same antiquarian, a professional purveyor of fakes. It was a strange and potent trio of common interests, a musical genre devoted to women's empowerment, a historical line of inquiry practiced by only a handful of scholars, and the unshakable conviction that a rather obscure ancient Egyptian goddess had sought each of us out to be her mouthpiece. One of the first projects I worked on with Ronnie and Tamra was their interview project, The Emergence of Sekhmet. Everyone they interviewed was coming to grips in some way with their interaction with the larger-than-life energetic force, which yet had a distinct personality and a mission for us to amplify her name and message. If you haven't experienced this for yourself, I can't tell you what a relief it was to meet the others, strident outsiders like myself, who were too outspoken for most spiritual communities, and yet aligned by our shared devotion to one very demanding goddess. I won't speak for Ronnie or Tamra, but I felt like we were part of a secret coven of misfit rock and rollers, initiated by the goddess herself into an elite group that made spirituality political. I always saw Tamra's dedication to women's liberation and empowerment as the natural expression of Sekhmet working through her. Tamra and I edited each other's manuscripts. She read my literary take on American esoteric history, the American Renaissance Tarot. I read through her rollicking memoir of the years she spent under the tutelage of Manly P. Hall, along with her partner, Ronnie. Tamra gave the world a great gift with her memoir, humanizing a teacher whose status, I believe, will only grow in the coming years as we gather in the temple Hall built today. Tamra also showed us the woman behind the man, Marie Bauer Hall, whom she called the original Riot Girl, along with her own experience being a wise woman, watching her all-too-human partner receive accolades while she baked cookies. It is a story I think all women can relate to, having potent and underappreciated insight into the hidden power dynamics of male-dominated scenes. Fittingly, Tamra and Ronnie reinvented themselves as rock stars after their stint as mystics in the Riot Girl scene where Tamra's voice and political fire were elevated. Her passing struck me very hard because there are not many like her. A mystic with 2 feet firmly planted on the ground in this world, one who understood the effectiveness of political advocacy, a spiritual person who unabashedly embodied the sacred power and righteousness of women's anger. She was a lion, and I can think of no more appropriate send-off to Tamra than to read a portion of Robert Masters' Invocation to Sekhmet, which Tamra knew and loved. Sekhmet, preeminent one. Sekhmet, light beyond darkness. Sekhmet, sovereign of her father. Thou art the terror before which fiends tremble. Thou art lust, thou art life, ever burning one. Do not consume us with thy fire, give us light. O Lady, mightier than the gods, adoration rises unto thee, all beings hail thee. O Lady, mightier than the gods, preserved beyond death that secret name, O being called Sekhmet. At the throne of silence shall no more be spoken than encircling one. I lose myself in thee. Thank you. I'll give you a high five.
So next we did the magic of the Orphic Hymns, and we've been working on it for almost 40 years. Tamra was pretty pleased with her progress and all the different lives that she had lived. And on her last healthy day, she edited the last chapter of my recently published book, The Rosicrucian Counterculture. Over 5 days, she became ill and with a rapidity that was stunning as she turned away from life. I found her unresponsive, and she went to the hospital in an ambulance. I was told she would be coming home, but there was some kind of problem that happened at the hospital. And after 5 days in the hospital, Tamra was gone. As I sat in the hospital, hearing Code Blue repeating, and saw the doctor approach me, and she sat down next to me and took my hand, I knew what had happened. And who do you think it was who hugged me and cried with me and then took me by the hand and led me through the maze of that horrible place? It was Margaret Maldonado. My friends, Ficino was right. The whole power of magic consists in love. And Tamra and I always put love above everything else in our lives. We made many decisions that people thought were crazy, great opportunities that we didn't take because we thought that it would harm our love. And the result was a truly magical life. It started with the ibises of Toth tapping their beaks at the table when I asked her to marry me. And it ended when, thanks to Thea and her friend Kate Becker, a prayer that I wrote for Tamra de Sekhmet was delivered to the feet of the Sekhmet statue in the sanctuary at Karnak. Our final book, The Unobstructed Way, was just published 2 days ago, and weirdly talks about how a very famous at the time in the 1930s and 1940s couple who were very deeply in love, that the woman in the couple died right before the publication of her book and then returned in paranormal visitations that stunned America. Tamra died right before the publication of our book, and she returned with paranormal visitations.
I'm Ike Baker. I don't have too much to say because I unfortunately never met Tamra, which makes the anecdote I'm about to tell even more curious. But it was probably a day or two after I found out that she had passed that I was sitting here at this desk. I'm kind of just going through my morning, answering emails, writing stuff, and having some coffee. I leaned back to sort of stretch and yawn, and I closed my eyes, and in my mind's eye, it was incredible. This flash of, I knew what Tamra looked like, obviously. I'd seen interviews with her and pictures, and we had kind of corresponded in the comments section of certain things on social media. It was very distinctly her, and her hair was kind of like flowing, and her face was quite serious, and it was just from about her neck up. And she had very piercing, penetrating eyes, it was kind of like looking into my soul sort of deal. And there was a very, very bright light coming from behind her. Kind of like an orange tint, I think, a little bit. It lasted all of like 3 seconds. Ronnie had been encouraging people on social media to post about things like this because apparently it happened to lots of other people. Again, we never met, which makes it that much more of a surprise even for me. But certainly, having a lot of experience in that, in vision work in general, I know for certain that was not something that my brain or my intellect generated. It was more so something that I perceived, intense enough to leave a mark on me, and for me to say something to Ronnie about it. He encouraged me to share that in a group and then asked me to make this recording. I'm very happy to do so thanks for asking me to put this on the record.
I have over 60 reports of paranormal visitations by Tamra. 39 of them are now the last chapter of that book. We're going to be closing up soon here, so I'm going to skip a couple of things here. And we're going to have 2 more brief presentations by speakers, and then you have all survived this extra long presentation. Muffy?
I'm kind of short, so this work. Hi, my name is Muffy Bolding, and I'm an old friend of Ronnie and Tamra's. And when we first all arrived here, as we're all kind of meeting each other out in the lobby, and people are like, well, how do you know them? And I was like, what? I couldn't remember. Like, I literally couldn't remember how I had met them. And so I thought, wait a minute, I have right in my pocket, like, a record of where we probably met. And I looked up and I went back to my Facebook messages, and scrolled up and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and went all the way back to 2009, April 17th. And I got a message, unexpected, and it said, "Hey, you have one of the wittiest Facebook About Me pages I've ever seen, sister." And that was it. It was her reaching out to another woman, another artist, as was her way. And then that was it. We were sucked into the world of Tamra and Ronnie and invited to their beautiful, mystical, magical home up on the hill, where we were invited to, you could call them parties, but they were almost salons, but just like happenings. And you would meet the most fascinating people once you walked through those doors. It was musicians and philosophers and metaphysicians and artists and writers, and they were all there, and you got a chance to meet them, and it was lovely. And thank you for bringing me into your world, Ronnie. It's meant so much. I've met so many interesting people. And the one thing that I want to say, that because Tamra was so vast, is that to cover all of that, there's one aspect of this that got kind of short shift, and I want to call it out, that the love story between these two humans is unlike anything I've ever heard of or seen in my life. It is and remains an astonishing thing. Ronnie told me just a little story that I think I would like to tell you that embodies exactly their love. In the middle of the night, Tamra would get up and cold, go to the bathroom. This person would roll over onto her side of the bed to keep it warm for her, to when freezing cold she came back to get into the bed. He would warm it with his own body heat. That kind of love, that kind of thoughtfulness that ran so deep and so wide in this relationship. And so I do want to acknowledge that. The extraordinary love story that I think now that Tamra's story is going to get out there, people are going to know about this, and people are going to know about your love story, Ronnie, and it is going to be an example, and people are going to bear witness to it and literally study it the same way that we've studied other great artistic partnerships and love stories from the past. So anyway, let me quickly get to, Ronnie asked those of us who had had visitations from Tamra to write them up for inclusion in the book. And I was getting kind of pissed off because she hadn't come to me. I was like, where the fuck are you? I'm here waiting for you. And so Ronnie and I talked on the phone, and he said, don't worry about it. Just let it lie. She'll come when she's going to come. And she did. I got up at 5:07 in the morning because I had to pee. In my experience, those moments, half asleep in the dark or near dark, on my way to and back from the bathroom, are a window into a liminal space where, as amusing as it sounds, I frequently have profound thunderbolt thoughts and receive astonishing messages. Tending to the demands of the physical while still dwelling in the metaphysical. During that time, I'm neither here nor there, and I'm doing my very best to hover in that state so that I can easily go back to sleep. I'm heading back to bed, and I hear this voice, a very particular voice, very clearly say to me, almost with a smirk, if you can't find a way in, just climb the fucking wall already, sister. I was like, what the fuck? And then I sort of shook my head and climbed back into bed and got my pillows fluffed and chihuahuas situated, and I closed my eyes, and then it hit me. Wait, that was Tamara's voice. But wall? What wall? Then I remembered, after I finished texting with Ronnie last night about visiting him, he sent me the address. I put it into my map app and where I saw it was and remembered driving there many times to their home. And I once again saw the huge wall under the house. I maneuvered the Google view to see exactly where I was supposed to enter to climb the steep driveway like I had before many times in the past. But for some odd reason, I couldn't find the exact address on my screen, even after maneuvering back and forth along the wall several times. So I gave up and figured that the way would, of course, be obvious once I got there that afternoon. And then I fell into a dreamless sleep until 5:07 in the morning. After I realized I'd heard Tamra's bemused voice, I laid there with my eyes closed and remembering what Ronnie had told me about the most conducive situation/environment for a visit. I just breathed into it, and both inside and out, I became still. I fell asleep and had an astonishing dream where I was inside their house with both Ronnie and Tamra for hours. At one point, we were all lying around, belly laughing and talking about everything on a giant round magenta velvet couch with pillows everywhere, almost like a trio of feral kids who crashed a slumber party in the bottom of Jeannie's bottle. As the three of us talked of things both above and below, and both esoteric and mundane, Tamra held my gaze and gracefully and in one elegant swoop shifted her legs and draped them over Ronnie's. And when she did so, I noticed her intricately painted toenails. Each one looked like an amazingly detailed gold, orange, blue, and black, color-saturated cartouche, complete with accompanying hieroglyphics. I gasped out loud at their beauty and told her how fabulous they looked. She nodded and smiled, that big, knowing Tamra smile, and told me that she was so happy I liked them because she wanted to gift them to me. I must have looked confused. Your toenails? Gift them to me? She told me to lie back very still, and she very gently climbed on top of me. Not in a sexual way in the least, but in a way that felt almost like a ritual. She laid there very still, mirroring me, it seemed, and then when she climbed off, the amazing designs that had been on her own toenails were now magically on mine. I stared down at my wiggling toes in delight and couldn't believe what I was seeing. They looked exactly the same as hers, in every way identical. Identical, yes, except mine were upside down and backwards. She rolled her eyes and shook her blonde hair and told us that most of the messages she was trying to get through to people here were being delivered to the intended recipient in exactly the same way, upside down and backwards. We laughed out loud, and Tamra flipped us both off and laughed in mock outrage and said, "Hey, cut me some fucking slack here. I'm still learning the new protocol." Then she said we must be getting hungry after all this lofty talk, so she went in the kitchen, and 1 minute, 100 years later, she called us both in and told me to stir the soup while she cut the gluten-free bread. Ronnie got the bowls and spoons out. I grabbed a ladle and lifted the lid and looked in to see what kind of a soup she had made for us. And as I looked deep into the depths of the pot, I saw past the onions, past the carrots, past the celery, past the red lentils, to see that there were stars in that pot, a veritable, sparkling, swirling Milky Way of actual stars in our soup. We three hungrily wolfed our celestial soup, and when she was through, I remember Tamra tipped her empty bowl in Ronnie's direction and said, "All done, Daddy. Do I get a gold star?" And he beamed back at her and said, "Baby, you just ate a whole bowl of gold stars," and went back for seconds, finally. Needless to say, it was the best soup I have ever eaten in my life. And in this, Ronnie notes, Muffy did not know that in the hospital I had been spoon-feeding Tamra and encouraging her to eat the night before she crossed over, of which I had no knowledge. Then, when I felt like maybe it was time for me to go so Ronnie and Tamra could spend some time together alone, she asked him if he would clean up after our meal, to which he said, "Of course." She then took my hand and led me onto the living room steps near the front door and said that she had some things she wanted to tell only me. She told me that she had to go back soon, that this was just a visit. But Ronnie didn't know that, and she didn't want to tell him that. Not yet. She wanted him to have a place of peace for a bit, where she was physically still here with him, because it is in that form that he most recognized her. That he would wake again soon enough, but for that time he could see her and feel her and know that she was there. She said that she would absolutely be back, and she told me to tell Ronnie that wherever the sun can touch, she is there, for us to look for her there. A couple of days after Tamra left, Ronnie had noticed a newborn lizard motionless in the blazing hot driveway under the big wall. He told the lizard to wait there for a free ride to Shangri-La in honor of Tamra. Ronnie hurried into the kitchen where he grabbed Tamra's favorite cup, the one she said yum over every morning when he served her coffee. Yum. That was her thing. When he returned, the lizard was still there. Ronnie gently laid the cup down on the concrete about a foot away from the lizard, who darted right in. When Ronnie laid the cup under a lemon tree, the lizard sprung out into his new home of jasmine and roses. Tamra told me there in the living room to tell Ronnie that she saw what he did and heard what he said, and that she sent the lizard to watch over him and the house to be sure and give him a good name, and that Ronnie would see that lizard again many times. She guided him there for Ronnie to find, and in case Ronnie didn't pick up on it yet, the message that the lizard carried to him from her was, keep it small. I said, keep it small? What does that even mean? I don't understand. To which she responded, you don't have to understand. It's not your lesson, Muffy. It's Ronnie's. But trust me, he'll understand. Now look, don't give me no lip, sister. Just do me a fucking favor and tell him. She laughed, and so did I. She was standing right in front of me, and I missed her already. Then she got serious, took both of my hands, looked me dead in the eye, and said one more thing, and this is important. Tell Ronnie that we were right about everything, all of it. We were on the right track, headed in the right direction. Tell him it's so vital that he continues the work that we started now more than ever before. Tell him that I will be continuing our work too, just not from here anymore. Tell him I'm not afraid in the least, and that he shouldn't be afraid either. Tell him that where I am, there is no such thing as fear. And now, pay attention, because here's the most important thing that you need to tell him, the thing that will save him again and again and again. 5 words. Tell him I said, use all that you know. I was completely unaware that Ronnie had very recently had a poolside visitation involving a dragonfly, where Tamra had told him, live up to what you know. I promised her I would tell him, and then she gave me a really good hug, the kind of hug where you stay hugged long after it's over, and I inhaled deeply of her long blonde hair. The only way I can describe it is that it smelled like a stream or a waterfall dappled with sun. Then she turned me around, faced me towards the door, picked up a black flip-flop with rhinestones and whacked me on the butt with it as she scooted me back out into my own great big world. That's to remind you to keep kicking ass, sister, she laughed in her Tamra roar as she closed the door behind me. And then I was woken up in bed by a cat loudly meowing below my window. I've never seen or heard a cat since we moved here, and I haven't seen or heard another since that morning. Arriving at Ronnie and Tamra's house later the same day of my dream visitation, I saw her black flip-flops with rhinestones from my dream. Ronnie had left them by the front door, as if she might return at any moment. I had no knowledge of him placing them there. At the time I had this dream visitation, I was completely unaware that Tamra was a nail polish fanatic and possessed a rather large, luxurious, and varied treasure trove of sparkly nail polish and nail art tools, and unaware that she considered the painting and festooning of her nails as just another extension and expression of her art. I knew none of that. A few weeks after my relaying this dream to him, Ronnie gifted me her expensive and extensive nail polish collection, which I treasure. At the time of this dream visitation, in which she revealed that all of her sent messages were coming through on this side, upside down and backwards, as she was a very private person about her own personal struggles, I was completely unaware that Tamra was severely dyslexic and had been her whole life. I had no idea. I told Ronnie and our friend Nicola all about my dream visitation as we sat in a circle in the dark, talking about the wondrous Tamra on the epic blue rug covered with stars and planets in the room that had been their music studio, where so much collective courage, love, and magic fomented and unfurled and helped fuel a revolution all those years ago. A postscript. The night before I finished writing up this dream visitation to send to Ronnie, I opened my phone to check my Notes apps for some memories that I had earlier stashed there when a Facebook notification popped up from, I shit you not, Tamra Lucid, to let me know that that specific day, August 25th, was the 17th anniversary of the date we became friends, because of course she did. This occurrence is made all the more bemusing in that, in a fit of major annoyance, I had turned off all social media notifications across all platforms, starting with Facebook, over 2 years prior. By choice, I had not received a single Facebook notification in over 2 years. My preferences were and are definitively set up for me to not receive notifications, and yet, there was Tamra's notification come through, bum rushed through, so very Tamra. And postscript. The night after I sent Ronnie this report, I dreamt that I was at the premiere of a documentary about Tamra's life and her work that was called 2 Feet of Blonde Hair. But here's the best part. As I was sitting in the front row in the dark, watching and eating my usual giant vat of salty, buttery popcorn, my absolute favorite food in the world, a strange hand from the right of me reached into my bucket and grabbed a huge fist of popcorn. And I was like, what the fuck? And I turned to see who has the audacity. And yep, you guessed it. It's Tamra. Shocked and delighted, I start to say something to her, and she quickly brings her finger to her lips and whispers, shh, I'm watching the fucking movie. Thank you. I love you, Ronnie.
We're going to close the program with Tiffany. Tiffany Name is going to have something to say. I just want to thank you all for being here. And I feel rather overcome emotionally, so I'm not going to give you a speech. I think what Tiffany has to say will be a fitting way to end this. Come on up, girl.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I
love you. And just to echo what Muffy said, love the love that you and Tamra had so much. So today we gather in rock and roll memory to growl and howl the name Tamra Lucid, a name that never sat still, a name that insisted on becoming a verb, to lucid, to awaken, to see clearly. She made noise on purpose. With Lucid Nation, her band with her soulmate Ronnie, she turned sound into declaration, lyrics as rebellion, rhythm as refuge. Her music wasn't background, it demanded presence. It was for the ones pushed aside, for the voices told to quiet down, for anyone who needed proof that anger could be holy and truth could be loud. Tamra lived lucidly, awake to injustice, awake to beauty, awake to the urgency of now. She did not look away. She did not soften the truth to make it palatable. She showed us how to stand taller without stepping on anyone else. Tamra stood ferociously for the underdog, not gently, not from a distance. She believed in justice with teeth. She challenged systems, called out cruelty, and refused the comfort of silence. She knew that neutrality often favors power, and she chose people instead. As a writer and a creator, she carried that same fire into language, words sharpened with empathy. Stories shaped by defiance and care. She understood that art is not a decoration. It is a tool, a shield, a flare sent up in the dark. I was lucky to work on film projects with Tamra, luckier though just to have her as a friend. As a friend, she was loyal, direct, and unflinching in love. She saw people fully, especially when they were struggling, especially when they were overlooked. She believed in others with a conviction that could feel like a much-needed rescue. Tamra was truly extraordinary. She had that rare mix of sharp wit, deep kindness, and radiant strength. Every time I was around her, I felt both safe and powerful. Just being in her presence made me a better person, made me a better version of myself. She inspired me with her talent, fierceness, and humor, and she made a real and profound impact on me that I will forever carry. Tamra and Ronnie's absolute and unwavering belief in me gave me more than I can express. That faith helped shape who I am now, and I'll never be without that gift. And though her physical voice has quieted, listen, she's still speaking. In the stories she sparked, in the films that carry her fingerprints of care, in the friends who think a little more bravely because they once knew her. And though she's no longer here in body, she is unmistakably present in the music that still vibrates with her voice, in the courage she modeled, in every moment someone chooses to speak up, to fight back, to protect the vulnerable. Tamra does not end here. She expands, she echoes, she remains. May we honor her by creating more boldly, by loving our strange, unfinished lives with the same fearless clarity she gave to hers, by being braver than is comfortable, louder than is polite, and truer than is easy, by standing for the underdog with the same fierce lucidity she gave to this world. Here's to Tamra.
I think the thing that I will remember most about Tamra is how she could suffer no fools while also holding in her heart so much space for compassion and nurturing, which is a really strange and difficult dichotomy to hold into one person, but she did it with so much grace. She was naturally curious, just like Ronnie, and they spent so many years together researching and writing about these great mystics and creating digestible ways for us to access these teachings. And their work with the whites had a tremendous impact on me. I mean, it's changed how I see the world, it's impacted my writing. She came to me in meditation about 2 months after she passed away. And I could just sense this, like, her fiery red orange spirit. It was incredible. It was so beautiful. And she kind of said to me with her arms crossed, get to work, like that when I was coming out of my meditation. And I think about that almost every single day. Like, how am I showing up in the world, and how am I, focusing on expressing my truth while I still get to be here? And I think that she's with us all the time. I think she's guiding us with her hand, and she's expressing her valiant heart in new and important ways wherever she is. And I'm just so grateful that I got to know her in the flesh. I'll never forget her.
What is so special and precious about having Tamra associated with the Orphic Hymns and their heartfelt new edition? If you look at their history, the path to this book was led years ago. With their band, Lucid Nation, Tamra and Ronnie were already conducting 20-year-long séances, creating rituals disguised as rock albums. Tamra wasn't just a singer, she was a shamanic front woman. So when with her husband Ronnie, they approached the Orphic Hymns, they weren't just scholars. They were performers of ritual music. Their partnership had already been forged in fire and ecstasy. This is why it couldn't have been anyone else. Tamra evolved naturally from that shamanic rock presence into the precise priestess and the inspired voice these ancient hymns needed. Tamra brought that live experience of channeling energy directly into the magic of their translation. This is the difference Tamra brought, a heartfelt one, making this edition of the Orphic Hymns unique.